Were there any candidates this year that stuck out to you?
Becca Ballant, Peter Welch, I'm a fan of. I think for governor, it's a little tricky. Seems like a complicated one for me.
I liked Becca Ballant. I liked Sarah George. She was running unopposed today, but I liked her in the primary. So those are two candidates that stuck out to me.
I've known Infinite Cookledger for a long time. It's good to see after kind of a Merrill run to see Infinite in the race and been able to chat with him. And then sadly, like a lot of people, it's really hard to, and I hate to say that because it's my civic duty to look into this, but I think it's really hard to pay attention to everyone and make sure that you're well informed. So it's very easy to vote party lines.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting mix here in Burlington to decide, between Dems and progressives.
Erica Reddick. And, Deploy Malloy. He stood out, new person. And there's a couple other new candidates that have stood out. I can pronounce their names very well, but Erica Reddick, I've been with her and volunteering for her, and she's an excellent person, human being, and she'd serve all Vermonters very well.
Oh, it's tough to keep up with them all. I'm really just looking at the independent, Democrat, and Republican mix and voting that way.
I think it's Vermont, so there's some degree where this got decided in the primaries. But, happy to vote for Peter Welch. I think he's been doing a great job, so hope he's going to continue that in the Senate.
Yeah, so I really like Tanya and Kate running for the State House and State Senate positions, as well as Brenda Siegel.
I was really excited to see David Zuckerman back on the ballot again. So that was the big one. And Infinite Closure for this place. So those are two people I'm glad to see them up in the world doing their things.
I'm really excited about being able to vote for both Tanya Vyhovsky and Infinite Colcleasure. I know the new Senate district thing just happened, and now I guess I'm in 17 rather than whatever I was in the past. But those are two people that I've worked with extensively on different activist stuff, and I feel like those are people who are actually trying to represent us and not just become these career politicians. These are people who are like really engaged in their communities, and I know that sounds really corny, but these are people who will like really fight for you, and I've seen them fight for people. So
good evening. I'm Jordan Butterfield.
And I'm Christine Lott.
And we're here to help you navigate tonight's election coverage. This is a general election. This is our 15th general election show here at Town Meeting TV, formerly Channel 17. We've been doing this for a long time. So we're really glad that you guys are going to be joining us tonight. I want to shout out to some of our van colleagues, other public access centers around the state who are helping us out. We're going to be checking in with people from MMC TV and from GNAT in Southern Vermont later this evening. Also, shout out to Orca Media for providing a Republican Party stream, and to Media Factory for helping us out with some tech stuff. Also want to thank those Exit Voices teams who filmed some of those interviews we did this morning. It's really cold out there this morning, so a lot of people coming in with red faces. So thanks to them for doing that. Thank you to Bobby, Emily, Navarro, Travis, Kate, and Scott. You're going to see a lot more interviews like that throughout the night. You'll also see a few of them at the parties later on. Also want to take a moment to recognize that tonight's show is dedicated in memory of Nat Ayer, who was the founder of CCTV, one of the founders of CCTV, who passed away this year, and who inspired our Exit Voices interviews. So thank you to Nat for everything that he's done for this organization. This is a big night, Christine.
Yeah, there's a lot going on tonight, locally, statewide, and at the national level. We have seen record turnover in our state house, half the Senate. I'm sorry, a third of the Senate, half of the committee chair positions in the House with all the turnover there. We have a big change in our congressional representation with Leahy's retirement after decades of service, and our state rep, Peter Welch, potentially moving into that seat, opening up space for Vermont to maybe send its first woman to Congress, the only state to have never done so. So there's a lot going on.
Yep, it's a big night. A lot of new faces and new voices potentially in the legislature and going to Washington. So it'll be an interesting night. You can watch us on channel17.tv. You can also watch us on Comcast 1087, BT 17, and 217. Of course, you can always watch us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/townmeetingtv. Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of new voices you mentioned, and we heard in the Exit Voices some folks talking about who they're voting for.
Yep.
Heard some incumbents there and some new people. The last gentleman there, Erica Reddick supporter, I think that's an interesting race there. You know, she was beat out in the primary, the Republican primary, for Leah Madden, a newcomer. And I think we've seen a couple of those in races where we've got brand new voices coming to the table. This could be a very different biennium than past legislative sessions and further up the ballot.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to be checking in throughout the night with some of those major parties and getting interviews with analysts who will be reacting to the results as they're coming in. We have, and we're going to start off with an interview from the Republican Party event that's in Barrie at the Elks Lodge. We've got John Klar being interviewed by Pi Von Loot. So take it away.
Hi there, I'm Paivan Lukumhan. It is election night here in downtown Barrie. We are at the Elks Lodge, and this is the watch party for the Vermont GOP. Standing next to me is John Klar, candidate for the Senate in Orange County. Do you want to say a few words, and how's it going tonight?
Well, it's been a long haul, and I think we're all sort of excited to have it over with, for better or for worse. It's a very tiring ordeal. But I really want to reach out to thank all my supporters and everybody who runs. I mean, in this democratic process, it really is a state where where the tail can wag the dog and regular Vermonters can run and be involved and have a chance of winning. And I think maybe we'll take some seats tonight, is my hope. Whether or not I do.
Well, you told me earlier that you're quite new to politics, and tell us, how you got into it and what you hope to achieve as like an average citizen going into politics.
Well, I got involved a few years ago just trying to shape a conservative message that was more moderate, more in between Phil Scott and Donald Trump for conservatives, and to try to appeal to Vermonters on conservative issues that would unify people rather than divide us. And I ran 2 years ago against Phil Scott, and we had almost 40 people run with me. Several of them won. And so that's kind of the foundation that I ran with. But it's kind of I've been called a rural populist, and I kind of like that. I mean, I know there are negative connotations to that, but I think people want authenticity, and they want people who they can trust. And that's what brings me to the party as a person who was, before that, a Democrat for most of my life. So I'm kind of a walk away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you do win this election, you've got 2 years. What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I think that we've got some real problems to tackle that require centrists from both the left and the right to come together. And I've actually been outspoken in support of some Democrats who understand the fiscal problems facing us, particularly with our pensions. Our government's too big. Our schools are the second most expensive in the country as a function of our income. And our government's growing faster than the underlying economy, and we can't simply be dependent on tourism and handouts from the federal government as Vermonters. We need to rebuild our economy, and I believe that we can do that, believe it or not solely, but a lot with farming and building along those strengths. And even agritourism. I mean, our tourism industry as well is built on farming, and we're losing our farms, and not just our dairy farms. So we have a huge opportunity with increased inflation and fertilizer and fuel costs to start exporting food again, like way we did. And there's actually a huge business plan right there.
For Senate in Orange County. He's running against Mark McDonald. They're outside of our coverage area, but a big race that people are watching, and so we'll keep an eye on that throughout the night. And let's go check in with the Democrats. We have Ann Lezak, who's chair of the Democrats at Hulu, at Hula, at their party at Hula. So let's check in with them now.
It's so great to be back at the Democratic Party here in Hula in Burlington, back in person. Ann, how does it feel to be here with your colleagues?
We couldn't be happier. We are so excited. You're right. To be in person is such incredible energy. And we are looking forward to a really great night and celebrating with some incredible candidates who are going to be elected before the night's over.
That's fantastic. And now, Ann, can you tell us a little bit about your role as the chair of the Democratic Party of Vermont and a little bit about what you do?
Yes, so I really see my role when things are going really well as chief cheerleader. I really feel like now that with elections season, we have had an amazing, talented young staff who they know how to, push the levers and make things happen and do the data and all that. And so my job is really just to be behind the scenes, helping everybody feel like, how important this is, making sure that volunteers, that our county chairs are getting out to volunteers, are really giving the resources that our really talented staff can use to then help people get elected. And then I'm also like troubleshooting and problem solving in the background. If there's some issue with someone, I'm happy to come in and kind of smooth things over. It's election season and feathers get ruffled and that sort of thing. But I have to say that this has been an amazing team effort. And I just feel like we've come together in a beautiful way. And this Together for Vermont, it wasn't me who came up with that slogan, but that is, I feel, how we have conducted ourselves. And I feel coming out of this, we are just on a real high and working together beautifully.
That's wonderful, Ann. And I'm curious how you feel about there's a lot of races nationally that Vermonters and particularly Democratic Vermonters are looking at closely. How do you feel those results may impact Vermont Democrats?
I want to tell you that tonight we have talked about this and we have said we are going to make this a celebration of Vermont. We are, of course, incredibly concerned about what's going on around the country. I mean, there are so many scary folks, you know, election deniers, science deniers, climate deniers, and some of them are going to get elected, and that's going to be very, very tough. But I want to tell you that we are going to keep the focus on Vermont, and then everybody can go home. And, you know, a lot of those western states, the results won't even be in, so we'll deal with that. You know, we can cry into our beer tomorrow. But tonight is about Vermont and celebrating our amazing candidates.
Well, we're looking forward to celebrating Vermont with you tonight here at the Democratic Party, and thank you so much for speaking with us.
I'm delighted to have you here, and I look forward to, you know, let the party begin. So, all right, thanks a lot, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Great. All right.
Thank you to Emily and the team at the Democratic Party for bringing us those interviews this evening. Christine, what kind of things what are we looking at tonight?
Well, we mentioned new faces earlier. There's also a lot of new places. With redistricting, you know, both our House and Senate maps have changed. We see incumbents actually kind of not incumbent, right, because their district has changed. And it seems to have opened up a lot of seats for new people as well.
Right. And then one of the biggest redistricting changes there is in the state Senate. Those state Senate districts have changed in Chittenden County. And we are seeing 3 districts rather than the full 1 district.
Yeah, that's a huge change. So I think there had been criticism over the years about this Chittenden County block of 6 senators representing, you know, 160,000 people roughly. With these 3 new districts, this has reduced the number of constituents each of those senators is serving. It's changed the makeup, so some of these new districts feel a lot more rural than they might have before. And it's, I think, even for incumbents, changing the way that they have to engage with their constituents.
Right, because both the Chittenden North District and the Chittenden Southeast District far more rural than they used to be. Chittenden Central District is a lot more centralized around the urban area, the metropolitan area around Burlington, Winooski, Essex Junction.
Yeah, so speaking, you know, from Winooski, I've seen the folks running in our district more this election cycle than previous years, and I think that speaks to the ability to connect more with fewer people. We will continue to have an urban focus, I think. We're Winooski, Burlington, and Essex Junction there. But you mentioned the North District, right? So from Essex all the way up into the islands, into Grand Isle, actually.
Yep. Yeah, so it's that's going to change a lot. We're going to keep an eye on that. We had some senators who've retired, so we're going to definitely see some new state senators coming in from Chittenden County. Also seeing a lot of turnover in the legislature, the legislative races, as you were saying earlier.
And in the House, you know, we see a number of unopposed races, a lot of like single-person districts, some independents, some write-ins happening. So there's a lot of change coming.
Yeah. And we're going to be keeping track of that for you throughout the night. We've got a room full of people calling town clerks and collecting information, and we'll have it available to you on the general election results page. You can see these election results at results.townmeeting.tv, so results.townmeeting.tv, and we'll be counting these throughout the night, returning to this pretty frequently. We love our election module. We've depended on it for a long time. And yeah, you can check in on this throughout the night. We'll note that this is Chittenden County results specifically. Our coverage area doesn't extend to the entirety of Chittenden County, but we do collect all Chittenden County results so that we can help out with the state Senate races. But if you want some of the statewide races, you can go to the Secretary of State website, which we're still going to be looking at as well. Yeah.
Talking about that Chittenden North District, that's, I think, one to watch. You know, I've heard that this is potential for a Republican to pick up a seat, maybe, in the state Senate. We have a former incumbent in Leland Morgan, who had been representing Milton as a Republican and being challenged by a Democrat, Irene Renner from Essex, who's also a known entity there.
The Republicans thought that they could possibly pick up a seat there. That should be an interesting one. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on, and the people in the state are going to keep a close eye on that. We've also got the Chittenden Central race coming up, where we will certainly have at least 2 new senators coming from that district.
Yeah, so Phil Baruth, the only incumbent, he served for quite some time. Rumor has it he could, if he moves on, become the next pro tem after Becca Ballant. We've got Infinite Colcleasure, who formerly ran for mayor in Burlington most recently, Martine LaRoque Gulick from the school board in Burlington, and Tanya Vyovsky, who has been on select board in Essex.
She was formerly in the she was a representative.
That's right,
She was a
yes.
representative and now is moving to state senate. And Martine LaRoque Gulick barely beaten out Erhard Manka in the primary by only two votes.
Yeah, that was significant. So a reminder that every vote does count.
Yeah.
Watching that recount, I was waiting to see what was going to turn out for my district there. Chittenden Southeast.
Yep, Chittenden Southeast.
This is maybe the most incumbents that are still on the ballot.
Yes.
You've got Thomas Chittenden, Ginny Lyons, who's been around for a very long time, Keisha Ram Hinsdale, and then these 2 challengers, Dean Rowland and Rowan St. Mart.
Yep, Keisha Ram Hinsdale, who was running for Congress in that packed Democratic primary, who stepped away from that to support Becca Ballant and to try to reclaim a state senate seat. There's a much more rural district than it used to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Some of these folks used to represent me.
Yeah.
They're now it's like Heinsberg, Shelburne, South Burlington, probably the most urban part left.
Yep.
And I think that, many of them have been serving already, but they're having to rethink how, what is the shared priority that's going to make the most sense or be the most important for my entire constituent body, especially having a more rural feel than it used to.
That's right. Speaking of some of the outlying areas, we're going to be joined by Angeliki Kontis from MMC-TV. MMC-TV is based in the Richmond-Jericho area, and they're going to have an election update from their coverage area. She checked in with Jordan Mitchell earlier tonight. Let's check out what they had to say.
All right, so thank you for joining us, Angeliki. Where are you calling from?
So I'm at my old high school, Mount Mansfield Union High School in Jericho. And this room, I guess the tech media lab room, was converted into a polling station during the day. Usually they're across the hall in the library, but this time they were in this other room. And I'm with all the volunteers, staff, clerk's assistant, Board of Civil Authority, and they're all here doing that wonderful thing in democracy called counting the votes and double checking everything.
Well, thank you for joining, and I'm so glad to see all that action behind you. And so what kind of races have you been watching today? We don't have any results yet because the polls just closed a couple minutes ago, but what have been the big ballot items or candidates you're seeing locally?
I have to say this has been, as far as we're concerned in public access, it's been kind of a sleepy local race because there's no contested House seats really, and not a lot of contentious local issues, which I guess is a good thing. But there weren't debates or anything on a very local level. So it's been pretty quiet. But from what I hear from the clerks, there's been a really good turnout, ranging from, I believe, about 50% in Underhill of voting before the election to a really high number, it sounds like locally, of 75% in Richmond. Before even today. So they were, I know here in Jericho earlier in the day, they were processing in these fancy new vote tally machines behind me. They were processing, I think the nearest days, like the day before and the day before that, they had caught up on all the days up to that. And now I guess the hard work of processing all this big collection of votes from today. And it seems like it was pretty busy, like very early in the morning, and there was a nice trickle of votes throughout the day, a good turnout, even though there wasn't a lot of really heated local stuff. I think people were looking more at the national level.
That's great. And I know this morning, you and maybe some of your team, your staff went out to the polls to record, some interviews with people at the polling locations. Was that this morning?
Yeah, well, I guess it was relatively easy to find parking, so it wasn't like overwhelming number of people or like people went at different times during the day. Even here at the high school students were kind enough to park in other places other than the front of the building. Yeah, so it seemed like it was like very civil and it was just quiet. Like there weren't a lot of candidates in front of the buildings, which we usually like to find and interview. There weren't a lot of issues in the hallways. I guess it's just the midterm election kind of feel. And it felt very peaceful and not heated and very Vermont-like sort of civic nature, and people I happen to know locally from different parties kind of sitting side by side and chatting and laughing. I guess kind of idyllic Vermont voting situation in these little towns up here in Chittenden County.
Well, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end our short time together?
We did, there was an interesting candidate in Underhill. We had somebody running for governor, Peter Duval, who I heard over at CCTV in a discussion you had there said that he didn't feel like he had a chance of really winning, but he still was throwing his hat in the race just as an effort to make sure that every single voice is heard. And I couldn't find him. I looked for him in Underhill, did not find him. Maybe he was in Burlington.
Yeah, I'm sure he's around somewhere. It's sometimes hard to tell where people will be. But thank you so much for joining and for this, spending this time together.
You're
Can we
welcome.
see once more the poll stuff happening behind you?
Absolutely. And I'll see if the clerk has a minute or two to say something if you'd like a little later.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, hopefully we'll see if we can join with the clerk later. But otherwise, we're going back to the folks in the studio. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you to Angeliki and Jordan Mitchell for doing that interview. Interesting to hear how things are going over there. Let's chat about the representative races a little bit. Go back to the legislature. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so we have some contested seats in Williston, replacing Jim McCullough, longtime representative. We've got 4 folks up for 2 seats. So Angela Arsenal, Aaron Brady as Democrats, Anthony Tony O'Rourke and Bruce Roy as Republicans.
In Heinsberg, we have 1 seat. That's Phil Poosh, the Democrat, with Sarah Toscano, the Republican.
In Burlington's District 13, we have Tiff Bloomley, the Democrat incumbent, and Gabrielle Stebbins, also incumbent, challenged by Tom Licata, independent, who is he's run before.
Yep. In Colchester, we have Sarita Austin, the Democratic incumbent, running against Patrick M. Brennan, the Republican incumbent, and then Spencer Sherman is running as a Libertarian. That's 2 seats.
Colchester Grand Isle, also 2 seats. We have 2 incumbent Democrats, Seth Chase and Kurt Taylor, and 2 Republican challengers, Doug Wood and Tom Lesage.
In Winooski, we have Daisy Rebecca, the Democrat, running against Jordan Matt, an independent, and Taylor Small, progressive Democrat. She's an incumbent.
In Essex Junction, Karen Dolan and Lori Houghton are incumbent Democrats. Seth Adam Manley is a Republican challenger.
And in Essex, we have 2 Democrats, Leonora Dodge and Ray Garofano. Ray Garofano is incumbent, running against Maurice Dunbar and Dennis White, both Republicans.
And then in Essex Town, for 1 seat, Alyssa Black is the incumbent Democrat with Roger Drury, the Republican challenger.
In Milton, we have Julie Andrews, Democrat, running against Allison Duquette, the Republican.
In Chittenden Franklin District, Chris Matos, a Republican incumbent, has a Republican challenger in Chris Taylor and a Democratic challenger in Emily Hecker. There's also a number of unopposed seats, especially in the South Burlington area, oddly enough.
Yes, South Burlington has a lot of unopposed seats and a lot of new representatives joining. We had 3 representatives from South Burlington leave. It was Ann Pugh, John Kalaki, and Maida Townsend not seeking re-election. We have 4 new faces coming from South Burlington.
Replacing some folks that had been around for quite some time.
That's right, yeah.
Burlington also has a number of unopposed and new candidates, mainly progressive Democrats.
Yes,
Carol Odie and Robert Hooper sticking around, Emma Mulvaney Stanek, Jill Krowinski, Speaker of the House. But we have some new faces in here. Mary Catherine Stone, Troy Hedrick, Kate Logan, Brian Sheen is still around, and Barbara Rachelson.
Yep, and we'll return to these results throughout the night. I already saw when we were looking at the results there that we already have a few.
Some are trickling in.
Some are starting to trickle in.
Yeah.
So we'll report on that. But before we go to that, let's check in with Ali Jang, who is with VNAC, Vermont New Americans Advisory Council, with a review of this election and how it's worked out for New Americans.
So thank you for joining us. Where are you calling in from?
Yep, calling from Burlington. Yeah.
Glad to have you on. So I know you work with the Vermont New American Advisory Council. You're the secretary of the Vermont New American Advisory Council. So I'd love to kind of chat about that. So as VNAC is working to build civic engagement for new Americans around elections, how do you feel that candidates, municipalities, and the media have done this election season to engage new Americans in the process?
Yes, thank you for that question. And I think before I responded, I wanted to just also say congratulations to all the winners. I know the results are coming, and also to all the voters, because at the end of the day, they are the winners because their voices have been heard now and respected. And to your question, I think I will start by, and how the candidates engage new American during the election season. So as you know, in late July, 5 Chittenden Central District Vermont Senate candidate, that's a mouthful, engage with the Vermont New American Advisory Council to give their perspective and understanding on new American communities, and how also also to understand the support needed regarding affordable housing, early childhood education, childcare, as well as their views about combating racism and promoting a sense of belonging, for new American families calling Vermont home. I think that speaks volume to that the candidates really want to engage with the newcomers and also the minority groups. I think also the municipalities have done tremendous amount of work in order to translate the ballot items in collaboration with the Secretary of State. And I think the city of Burlington is currently contemplating non-citizen voting for local elections, and the Charter Change Committee of the City Council, engage with the Vermont New American Advisory Council about the ballot language and the outreach mechanism needed to make it happen. And also you see another candidate such as Infinite, who is African American, and he intentionally found new Americans to be part of his team, basically of supporting his candidacy, and I wish them all very well. And I think, over the years also the translated ballot items that we have done, candidates are, showing up every single day to ask us questions, to engage. When we call them for debates, they show up. And I think all of that is they have an intention to working with Vermont New American Advisory Council as we move forward, and new Americans in general. But in terms of the media, I think everything that we have done so far, VNAC related events and everything, we collaborate with CCTV Channel 17. You have been an instrumental partner around this work, and we cannot thank you enough. But the only hope that we have is basically all the media outlets in the state of Vermont to look into you and to, basically also try to engage just the way that you do it. It's genuine, it's clear, and this is just that you want to build communities, and doing so, it requires including every single person.
Yeah, thank you. And, on the media piece, we appreciate the compliment, and, we're always, really trying to be there for the community and support organizations like VNAC, and, definitely hope that, that mentality can spread to other places. And so thinking about, what more can be done, do you think, to access, the talents and experiences of new Americans and other organizations like VNAC in building strong and healthy communities?
Absolutely. Thank you. I think that's a great question. What can be done more as we move forward? And I think the fact that understanding there are different community groups who speak different languages, who have different cultures, and try to engage them is one concrete example. that everyone needs to strive for, whether or not you are a state agency, you are a municipal government, whoever you are, organization, philanthropist, you need to engage these people because they are smart, they are educated, and their perspective also are unique in making this state the best place to live, work, raise children, etc. And I think people also need to stay away from using New American as an afterthought. I think it would be important, from the get-go, from the beginning, to include them in thinking about policy ideas, in thinking about reform or structures. And I think their perspective are only going to diversify and increase also your perception about life, about well-being as well. I think those are concrete things that people need to build a strong, healthy community. The fact that
Thank you to Ali Dang and Jordan Mitchell for that interview. Great to check in with him to hear about his views on the election this season. Let's go check in with the results page again. We are getting some results starting to trickle in. We got some results from Westford. We have a few results from some of the wards in Burlington. Slowly starting to trickle in. We'll see how this shapes up. Sometimes it all comes in a wave. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll come back to that soon. Next, we're going to check in back at the Republican Party. We have an interview with Paul Dame, GOP chair, and let's see what Paul Dame had to say.
Hi there, it's Paivan Lukaman here at the Barrie Elks Lodge in downtown Barrie. We are at the Vermont GOP Election Watch Party. I'm standing here with Paul Dame, chair of the Vermont GOP, and the polls have closed and the results are trickling in. Can you tell me what we've seen so far?
Yeah, so far the first only results that we have are from Barrytown, where we had Representative Topper McFawn running for re-election, and his previous seatmate, Rob LeClaire, had retired. So we had a new Republican running in that race, Gina Galfetti, and Gina was successful. So Republicans have retained that second seat in Barrytown. So the first news of the night is good news. So we just hope that it keeps coming.
Great. I heard from my co-host over there that both Topper and Gina were doing a pretty rigorous door-to-door canvas campaign.
Yeah, that's really what we recommend for all of our candidates. It's the best way to make sure that you get to know your district and the people that you're representing, and making sure that you're able to listen to what their concerns are so that you know how to represent them. And that's something that Topper McFawn has been doing for years. And so it's been great in that 2-seat district to have an established veteran like Topper who knows the area, he knows the legislature, and to have Gina kind of come in working with Topper to reproduce those results that are working for him.
Yeah, so as the night rolls on, what other major what other races are you really keeping a keen eye on?
Yeah, I think we're keeping an eye on certainly a couple of our incumbents, like Vicki Strong up in Orleans, or Samantha LaFave, who's here tonight, to make sure that we keep the Republicans that we have that have been in there. And then we're also looking to kind of expand the map. I think there's a couple opportunities we have up in Franklin County with a new Fairfax, Georgia district that has Carolyn Brannigan coming back and Ashley Bartley. And we're keeping an eye here in Washington County on Paul Bean. He ran a very vigorous campaign for state senate, and in Washington County you get to vote for 3. So we're hoping that, despite the fact there are 2 incumbent Democrats, there's an open seat. We're hoping that Paul, as a younger Vermonter, is able to get in and be a voice for younger Vermonters in the Vermont Senate.
I've seen quite a lot of his signs around. Yeah, so let's touch back on something you were talking about, this new district. How has redistricting affected the campaigning?
Well, in some places, the districts look very similar to what they had before. So in some places, there's not large changes. In other places, especially as you get into Chittenden County, where more of the population is, we had to do some redistricting because there's more people living there, so they need more reps. And then the other side of that is places like the Northeast Kingdom, Caledonia, Orleans, Essex County lost some representation. So that has meant kind of moving the map around a little bit. In some places, there's probably one place that's created an opportunity for Republicans in the Senate. It looks like we've got a good chance of getting a Republican Senate candidate out of this new district around Milton. And then in some other places, it's certainly hurt us. A place like Vicki Strong I mentioned before, we kind of cut that district in half and cut Vicki off from some of the support that she's enjoyed for almost 12 years as a state rep up there.
Can we just talk about it? So yeah, we're looking at our results coming in. Thank you for that interview with Paul Dame. Thank you for speaking with us, and thank you to Pi Vaughn for doing the interview. And we're looking at this school bond in Burlington, which some of the results are starting to come in. It's looking pretty strong.
This is a resounding yes so far. Realize we don't have all of the wards reporting, but with a trajectory like this, it's promising for supporters of that. This is a big deal, a big vote for Burlington. They've had a number of significant bond votes in recent years, and $165 million, should this pass, I believe will be the largest school reconstruction vote to date in the state.
Yep. And it's a big question. Around the state, there was a over $200 million bond in South Burlington that went down a few years ago. So there was some question: is this going to come through? So far, looking like it is. There's a lot of pressure in Burlington because Macy's is not going to be around forever.
And there's been a moratorium on state funding for school construction for a number of years now, and I think we're seeing that come to a head with municipalities, local towns haven't been able to keep up with that, and so now we're requiring these substantial reconstructions and renovations. Situation in Burlington a little bit different with the PCBs and the sort of air quality issue there, but still an old building that had a need for renovation to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And it's an issue throughout the state. There are a lot of buildings like this throughout the state that are needing rebuilding. So,
we just in Winooski, we are just about to wrap up our school reconstruction project. Voters supported that to the tune of about $53 million a couple of years ago. And it was a substantial financial impact on us because these things are having to be funded locally. And so to see Burlington residents supporting that shows how committed they are to providing that healthy learning environment for their kids.
Mm-hmm. We heard that from a lot of the people that we talked to throughout the night and throughout the day. People in our exit voices talking about the Burlington school bond, and it was reflecting some of the numbers that were coming in now. So let's check in with some of those exit voices interviews talking about the BHS school bond.
I already voted absentee.
I voted absentee from Connecticut.
I was gonna vote absentee, but I forgot, so I'm gonna vote tomorrow.
I actually already voted online for my state, yeah. Or not online, with in mail.
I think it's important to vote because without voting, then government is pointless.
I think it's important to vote, especially as a young person. It's important to stay informed about what's going on and make our voices heard and our opinions heard on what should happen by casting a vote.
There's a few ballot measures in Connecticut, and that's very important to me. A lot of the races aren't close, but a lot of the ballot measures are important to me, like early voting, so I really want to support that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up here, but having a high school that doesn't have asbestos or is falling apart is important. I know it's expensive, but I feel like it's worth it in the long run because that's people's education.
Yep, I'm out here because I think it's really important for our community that we have a fully functioning high school, and Macy's has been a great stopgap in the meantime, but it's not a long-term solution.
It's critical. You can't have a thriving community without a thriving high school, and being in Macy's is fantastic. It's an incredible lift that we did that was an incredible success, but it's temporary.
Definitely build the high school. It's very important. It's going to bring a lot of jobs. It's going to bring a lot of teachers. It's going to bring a lot of everything to our land in Burlington.
Definitely the high school one. I'm native Burlington, and I went to Burlington High School myself, and I think that the city deserves in high school and a functioning high school. So definitely be voting for it for sure.
Like the kids at BHS need a high school because theirs is full of asbestos and they're going to school in the mall, and I think they should have a high school.
Yes, especially for me, the high school one feels, I'm a retired educator, and I just think that's so important for a community. It's the least a community can do for their children.
I'm 2 middle school students, and I would like to see a high school built, so anything it takes.
The development of a new high school was very important to me. The kids who have had to go to high school in the last few years have gone to something that isn't appropriate for them. And this city is wealthy enough to be able to support a really good school.
Yeah, I think the new high school is very important. I voted for it. It's a lot of money, but we have to have a high school. My kids both had to go to school at the Macy's. Not ideal. They're not going to benefit from the new high school, but I want the future generations to have a real high school.
Yeah, so I played hockey with a few kids who've gone to school in that high school, and I've heard some of their thoughts, so it's an interesting, I don't have kids myself, so it's interesting to hear. I definitely think we need a new high school. Seems like it's going to be expensive, but I think that's just, I think it's always going to be expensive, so that's just the price we pay.
I voted for it. We need a high school. What kind of a community would we be if we didn't have a high school for the children of our community?
Yeah, definitely. That's what brought me out today to vote for the new high school. Yeah, in favor.
I love education. We should definitely, the kids need a place to learn. I've got a 1-year-old. He's going to need a place to learn. So vote yes for the school.
I think we really do need to buy like a really good, expensive, furnished high school that will last like 100 or even 200 years. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think the buildings are very important. It's also very much about the experiences that are going on, and not just in those buildings, but especially high school students, getting them out in the community like you're doing right now is really, really important. So while the facilities are important, it's the experiences that are the most important. And getting out in the community is... there's no substitute for that. So what you're doing is fundamental for education.
Thanks to Navarro and Travis for those Exit Voices interviews this morning. A lot of people coming out in support of the BHS bond.
Yeah, it trends well with what we're seeing in the results so far.
Yeah, in our results, we're starting to see some stuff coming in on the statewide items. We have that Burlington High School bond, which is looking really positive so far. We also have the CSWD MRF bond. Some of those numbers are coming in.
So this was a bond vote to do an expansion and renovation of the recycling facility for Chittenden County. Trending well. I know this was a point of confusion for a lot of voters since it wasn't included on the general ballot and had to be voted on separately.
Yeah, and this one is looking like those who did receive that ballot voting strongly in favor. We got almost 83% voting yes so far. Not complete results yet, but it coming in, so that's good news for the MRF and good news for a brand new 70,000 ton capacity building for that.
Vermonters love to recycle, so we need to keep our infrastructure intact so that we can do that.
Yeah.
I know we had another local bond vote for a communications union district, bringing broadband into parts of South Burlington, Williston, Essex, and Westford. We have no reporting yet on that, but that's another one we're looking at.
Yep, still keeping an eye on that one. We'll see how that comes through. We're waiting on results from South Burlington, Shelburne, Williston, Essex Junction, some of those areas that are voting on that, but we'll see how that comes. And then we have the two big state items, Prop 2 and Prop 5.
Constitutional amendments, these are big. So Prop 2 removes some language from our Constitution related to slavery. So there's actually mention in there about indentured servitude. I think this is something that probably surprised a lot of voters when this came, that this is still in the Vermont Constitution.
Yeah. Vermont prides itself being one of the first states to abolish slavery, and it's still in the Constitution. So removing it, long time coming.
Yeah, and action from our legislature saying that language matters and that we shouldn't have that language in our founding document. Proposal 5, reproductive liberty, another amendment adding language to strengthen protections for Vermonters. We already have reproductive rights in Vermont, but this is, I think, our legislature saw the writing on the wall with the Supreme Court and have this proactive measure in here to help strengthen those protections for Vermonters.
Yeah. We're starting to get some information in on Prop 2 and Prop 5, taking a look at looking at Vermont public reporting. Less than 25% of votes have been counted, but both Prop 2 and Prop 5 looking like strong yeses. But for now, let's go back to the party at Hula, go back to our friends over at Hula. Leahy is speaking at the Democratic Party. Let's see what he has to say.
Thank you. Marcel and I got a kick out of hearing trucking because that's become something we played every one of my elections on election night. I think the first time they thought maybe play it because I may be trucking out of there because I wasn't supposed to win. But it has been so wonderful to do it. Marcel and I have enjoyed all these years seeing all of you here. And back a couple months ago, come on up here, Marcel.
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, okay. Good. After a month in the hospital with Marcel taking care of me, teaching me how to walk again, I'm glad she's here. But about 2 or 3 years ago, we started thinking about where this is going, what would be the legacy. I felt it was time we wanted to go. We figured out between primaries and general elections, state's attorney and Senate. I've been on the ballot in Vermont 24 times, and that should be enough for most people. And so we made up our mind, as announced a year ago, that we're going to go home and be back at home, have more time with children and grandchildren. But I also saw the way the country is going. And this is not a plug, but I wrote a book just finished a couple of months ago called The Path Taken. And I've talked about the downward arc of much of what we've counted on, both Republicans and Democrats, in the U.S. Senate, and how badly it's gone. And I worried about that for the future. We saw on January 6th an example of the worst aspect of that. The one thing that gave me hope and all during this time is watching who would be the next senator. I don't want somebody to be a rubber stamp or be a duplicate. I want somebody to have Vermont values. Peter Welch has those values, and he's our next senator. I was telling Peter earlier this evening, every time during these past few months, the senators, whether they're running for re-election or just watching elections, have asked me, what is Peter Welch like? I said, you could not ask for a better senator. I don't care what party you're in. You couldn't ask for a better senator because he has the true value, as I point out in the book and as I learned. He keeps his word. You can trust him. He cares about our state of Vermont. Now, I got to admit, my first campaign was called the Children's Crusade. We had all these young volunteers, including this young new attorney down the far western, our eastern side of the state, rather, in Windsor County, called Peter Welch. Look who Peter Welch is. Every single one of you on January 3rd at noon, when Peter stands there and takes the oath of office, you can say, Vermont, all of us, we're in good hands. A lot of states aren't going to be able to say that. Vermont can. Vermont can say it with Peter Welch. So, Marcel and I want to welcome Peter and Margaret up here. This is our future.
Hearing from Senator Leahy, who his retirement this season was a big shakeup for our national delegation, and as top of the ticket races on both the Senate and Congress are as a result of his retirement.
Yeah, a waterfall of changes. We just heard from him discussing Peter Welch, who is the nomination to take his seat over from the Democratic side, but also a number of challengers in that race for Senate.
Yeah, we're starting to get some results trickling in on the Secretary of State's website. Only 52 out of 283 towns reporting, so this is really early stuff. But looking at Senate, we have Peter Welch with 64% of the vote and Gerald Malloy with 30% of the vote.
We can see a little bit of support for some of the other folks, independents and Green Mountain Party running here too.
Yep, we've also got Dawn Marie Ellis, Carrie Patrick Raheb, Stephen Duke, Mark Coaster, Natasha Diamondstone Cohout, and Chris Erickson also running for this race. But for right now, in these 52 towns that are reporting, a lot of votes for Peter Welch and Gerald Malloy, with Peter Welch in the lead.
And now looking at the seat that Welch opened up, we have Becca Ballant here leading Liam Madden, and some votes for Erica Reddick, also Matt Drusba, Luke Talbot, Adam Ortiz running as independents.
Yeah, I mean, go back to that Senate race a little bit, talking about how that's looked. Peter Welch, former representative of Congress, he's been representative of Congress for a long time, and he is trying to run for Senator Leahy's seat, unopposed not completely unopposed in the primary, but
he had a great showing in the primary,
yeah.
And with the challenger on the Republican side, Gerald Malloy, a relatively newcomer to the scene, to Vermont's Republican scene.
That's right, beating out Christina Nolan, seen as a longtime figure in Vermont politics, and who is more of the moderate Republican, beaten out by Gerald Malloy,
who I heard was recently Trump endorsed.
That's right. I heard that recently.
Which was kind of a shakeup for the Republicans in that race. Similar thing happened on the House side of things, where you had Liam Madden, an independent, come out and beat Erica Reddick for that nomination.
Yeah, Erica Reddick and I believe Anya Tainio were running in that Republican primary and beaten out by Liam, who was an avowed independent against the two-party system, running as a Republican to get visibility of the campaign, and then ran away with the primary.
A lot of surprises there. I think there's something interesting. There's something interesting going on there, where you see these sort of long-time known faces being replaced with new folks.
Yep.
On the Democratic side, we've got more, folks who've been around for a long time, who've been in service, and also we mentioned earlier about Vermont not having sent a woman to Congress before. We see on the Democratic side, we had a lot of women in the primary, and it's not quite the same on the Republican side of the ticket. So I think there's we're seeing kind of different priorities happening there.
Right. Well, Republican women running in the primaries and being beaten out.
Yeah, by some new faces.
Yeah. So interesting stuff that we're keeping an eye on here. We'll see some more towns reporting in throughout the night, and we'll keep an eye on that Secretary of State's website and see about those federal races. Let's go back to our local results for a little bit, check in and see where things are at. Looks like we have some of the ballot items. Let's see where we're trending here.
Burlington High School bond vote still looking strong for the yeses.
That's right. That's still CSWD also still looking strong.
No reporting yet for our Communications Union District membership.
It looks like we've got some state Senate information coming in here. We have, this is for the Chittenden Central District. We have Phil Baruth in the lead with 33%, Martine LaRock Gulick in second with 30%, and then Tanya Vyofsky with 24%, and Infinite Colcleisure with 11%. We have 8 out of 18 districts reporting, so this is still early information. Yeah.
Over in the Southeast District, we've got a very tight lead between Ginny Lyons and Thomas Chittenden, followed by Keisha Ram Hinsdale. Those are our 3 incumbents, so they're currently in the lead with roughly 30% each. Dean Rowland and Rowan St. Mart at 4% and 3% respectively.
We are looking at 1 out of 12 reporting on that one, though, so we'll keep an eye on it and see if those leads hold. Let's see, do we have Chittenden North here as well?
Wow, very close.
Wow.
Just as potentially predicted, right? So Leland Morgan, the Republican coming from Milton, Irene Renner, the Democrat from Essex, almost a 50-50 split here with Leland Morgan in the lead with 50.6%.
Once again, 2 out of 5 reporting on that, so still early.
Yeah.
But that is very close.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be one to watch.
Yes. So let's check back in with our friends at the Republican Party. We've got an interview with Erica Reddick at the Elks Lodge in Barrie. So let's hear from Erica.
In downtown Barrie, we are at the Vermont GOP Election Night Watch Party, and standing next to me is Erica Reddick, and I'll let her introduce herself and tell me what office you're running for and what you're looking forward to tonight.
Yeah. Are you holding it?
I'll hold it.
Okay. My name is Erica Reddick. I am the Libertarian Party candidate for Congress. I also have the support and endorsement from the majority of the GOP apparatus here in Vermont. Especially for folks who don't know, the young man who does have the R behind his name is not actually a Republican. But I was very blessed to also have received the Libertarian Party endorsement. And so the thing that I'm most excited about is that, I would say, number one, the Libertarian Party is going to become a major party here in Vermont tonight with my candidacy. So that's pretty exciting.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the Libertarian Party and how it's different from the GOP?
Yeah, great question. The Libertarian Party, much like the GOP, is focused on liberty, right? So it's really about freedom, bodily autonomy, always been pro-gay marriage, where the GOP was not previously. The Libertarian Party is also pro-cannabis, and so that's one thing that the GOP is not for. So they tend to be a little bit more liberal on social issues than the GOP does. That's probably the main difference.
Remind me, which congressional seat are you
Well, the Vermont U.S. House. U.S.
right.
House seat, yeah. So we
Great.
just have the one.
And what was your motivation for running for that position?
Great question. My motivation for running for Congress was just seeing our country running off of a cliff. I'm an accountant by trade. That's what I've done for much of the last 20 years. So I knew that this inflation spike was coming when those stimulus checks came out. I knew what was going to happen to the supply chain when they started shutting down, doing lockdowns and things like that. And sure enough, it did happen. And then see that leadership is lying and saying, it's transitory and, all this other stuff. Why are you not American people the truth about what's going on? Strategic oil reserve, withdrawal from Afghanistan. I know.
Okay.
I feel like our current leadership, while they may be intention, don't seem to understand the American people stable and will take more caution and care before changing our institutions.
Great. One last question. Let's keep it quick, because
I know. We got got the wrap up sign over here.
So the Congress is large, and
Yeah.
sometimes it moves really slowly, and sometimes it takes a while to make a name for yourself. What do you hope to accomplish in your first term if you get this seat?
My goal is going to be I'm going to submit 3 bills for consideration. One is going to be for term limits for federal officials. Another is going to be for a balanced budget, so no more deficit spending, just running the black card for $6 trillion a year or whatever it is. And single issue bills. So instead of these 10,000-page omnibus spending packages that they just stuff in, single issue bill, one appropriation, one topic. These are items that are bipartisan, that Democrats, progressives, and Republicans all across the board, libertarians, everyone agree that that's how you can help restore accountability, transparency, and integrity to Washington.
Thank you so much. We've been talking with Erica Reddick, who is on the ballot for the U.S. House in Congress. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Have
Have a
fun
good
tonight.
night. Yes.
Thank you to Paivon and Erica for that interview. Let's continue our recap. Let's check back in with the numbers and see what we have to look at. BHS school bond still looking strong with a lot of yeses. We have 4 out of 8 reporting, so half of the awards coming in, but still looking strong on that.
6 out of 25 so far on the materials recovery facility bond. Still 81% yes. 80% yes.
Getting some information in for the Chittenden County Communications Union District. We got 1 out of 5 reporting, but so far that's looking like a yes vote.
In the Chittenden Central District, Phil Baruth, the incumbent, is still in the lead with 33%. We have 8 out of 18 reporting. Martine LaRoque-Gulick with 30%, Tanya Vyovsky at 24%, and Infinite Cook-Leisure at 11.7%.
And going to the Chittenden Southeast District with 3 out of 12 reporting. We got Thomas Chittenden with 30%, Ginny Lyons with 28%, Keisha Ram Hinsdale with 25%, Dean Rolland with 8%, and Rowan St. Mart with 6%.
In the Chittenden North District, only 2 out of 25. Leland Morgan at 53.3% and Irene Renner at 46.6%. Still a tight race.
Going to some unopposed races here. Richmond, we have Yana Brown, Democratic incumbent, 100%.
In South Burlington, another unopposed, so Noah Hyman, Democrat, with 100%.
And then going back to Burlington, we have some information on District 13, Tiff Bloomley with 47%, Gabby Stebbins with 42%, Tom Licata with 9.8%, 1 out of 2 reporting for that.
In District 14 in Burlington, 2 seats, Barbara Rachelson in the lead with 53%, Mary Catherine Stone with 46%, 2 out of 2 reporting, so they will both be advancing.
Then in Burlington District 15, we got 2 seats, Brian Chena and Troy Hedrick, both going to the legislature.
In District 16, Jill Krowinski, our current Speaker of the House, and Kate Logan, 3 out of 5 districts reporting.
In Burlington District 17, we have Emma Mulvaney Stanek returning, 1 out of 3 reporting.
In District 18, Burlington, Kara Odie and Robert Hooper, 1 out of 2 reporting.
In Milton, we have Julia Andrews, Democrat, and Julie Andrews, the Democrat, with 54%, and Allison Duquette, the Republican, with 45%, 2 out of 2 reporting, so that's very close.
Yeah, that is a close one. In Chittenden Franklin, for 2 seats, we have Chris Taylor in the lead at 59%, Emily Hecker with 21%, and Chris Matos at 19%.
So that's fairly close for that second seat.
Probate judge here, Gregory J. Glennon, with no opposition there.
For assistant judge, that's 2 seats, Suzanne Brown and Connie Kane Ramsey, both becoming assistant judge.
For state's attorney, Sarah George, continuing on, 3 out of 17 reporting.
For high bailiff, we have Michael R. Major, Democratic Republican, with 73%, running against James A. Mallon, the independent, with 26%.
So there's a number of unopposed positions there. Also, it looks like in our contested Senate races, our incumbents are likely to continue on, but it's still early. We don't have all the numbers yet.
Yep, and that Chittenden North, we'll still keep an eye on that one. That should be interesting.
Still very tight.
Taking a closer look at the CUD support, because we have that mass percentages, but it does, whether or not the CUD happens depends on which towns vote for what. And it looks like we have our information is coming in from South Burlington, so that's where that yes vote so far is looking like it's coming from.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One would suspect they would have better coverage out of all that group. So to see them interested in pursuing that's great news.
Yes, it is. And then other towns can join that communication district afterwards as well.
That's right, yeah. Just takes a couple to get it started.
Yeah. So let's go to, let's see what we got here. We have some of our statewide results. So starting off with the governor's race, we have Phil Scott in the lead, 59 out of 283 towns reporting. So still early, but he's got a lead of 70% with Brenda Siegel with 20%. And then going down that line, we will go to Lieutenant Governor.
Wow, this is looking close so far. 59 out of 283 towns, with David Zuckerman in the lead at 47%. Joe Benning closely behind at about 45%. It looks like we're getting some refreshed information here.
Yeah. Looks like we're looking at state treasurer here. We have Mike Piechek. This is Beth Pierce's seat. Mike Piechek in the lead as the Democrat with 57% against H. Brooke Page with 37%.
Then at Secretary of State, we've got replacing Jim Condos, Sarah Copeland-Hansis, the Democrat, in the lead at 57%. H. Brooke Page here, the Republican, with 37%.
Going to Auditor of Accounts, Doug Hoffer, Democratic Progressive, with 57% against Rick Morton, the Republican, with 36%. Once again, for all these, 59 out of 283 towns reporting, so early.
Still early, for sure. In the Attorney General's race, Charity Clark, the Democrat, is in the lead at 57%, with Michael Tagliava, I think it said 37% there.
Yeah. So interesting, some of the statewide results coming in as well. A lot of Democratic candidates winning out so far, but we'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, it looks like they're in the lead for the moment.
Yeah. Speaking of one of those unopposed folks that we just were listing, we have an interview with Sarah George at the Democratic Party at Hula. Let's check in with Sarah George.
Back here at Hula in Burlington with the Vermont Democrats, I'm joined by Democratic candidate for Chittenden County State's Attorney, Sarah George. Sarah, how does it feel to be back in person tonight with your colleagues for election night?
It feels really good. I actually didn't really think about it until I walked in and then was like, oh man, this is the first time I'm going to see a lot of these folks, which is really exciting. It's good to see everybody.
Awesome. What are you hoping to accomplish in the State's Attorney office for the next couple of years?
I hope to continue doing a lot of the same work I've already been doing. Most of the policies and practices that I implement in this work come from the community and come from the data as it comes out. So I don't have a plan now for all the things I want to do. I'm just going to wait to see what the community wants and what the data tells us we should be doing, and then do what I can to implement policies that will help to address those issues.
And you had a pretty challenging primary race earlier this year. Did that change the way that you thought about running this campaign, or the way that you think about your job in the State's Attorney Office?
You know, the challenge that I faced was disinformation. So I think that something I really want to focus on going forward is finding ways to be more accessible to the community, to fact check things that they hear. You know, I've been thinking about setting up a tip line or some way that people can call and ask if something they've heard is accurate. During the campaign, something I did was get curious with Sarah George, and they were clips to sort of try to tackle some of the disinformation, and people have asked that I continue doing that because they found those really helpful. So I don't think that how I do the work will necessarily change, but I do think how I interact with the community will.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Back to you guys, Studio A.
Thanks, Bobby, and thanks to Sarah George for doing that interview with us. And statewide results are starting to come in. We've got teams from around the state who are helping us out tonight. In Southern Vermont, we have Andrew McKeever from GNAT, a member of VAN and one of our supporters. We have an interview with him. Let's check in with how things are going in Southern Vermont.
Well, thank you for joining me, Andrew. It's great to have you here. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Sunderland, which is just a little bit south of Manchester and a little north of Arlington.
Wonderful. And I know you work with GNAT, the news director at GNAT, the Greater Northshire Access Television Station, so another public access station in Vermont, which is wonderful. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the local races you've been watching down there, and if you have any results so far?
Well, yeah, there are about 4 local competitive races we've been following. 3 of them are for House seats, and one is the county sheriff's race. I'll start with the House seats. One in particular was kind of interesting. The Bennington 4 district that includes Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and a part of Sunderland, where I'm calling in from. It's a 2-member district. The 2 current incumbents are Representatives Kathleen James and Seth Bongartz, and they were challenged this year by a Republican candidate. Both Seth and Kathleen are Democrats, I should say. They were challenged by a Republican candidate for one of those 2 seats, a gentleman named Joe Jervis, who was from Arlington. Both Kathleen and Seth are from Manchester. So the only results I've gotten in so far are from Arlington itself. And I guess if Mr. Jervis was going to make a challenge out of the race, it would have been expected that he would have performed strongly in his hometown of Arlington. But the results I'm seeing show him in 3rd place, about 200 votes behind both Kathleen and Seth. So it's not over yet and all of that. And the biggest vote totals will be coming from Manchester. It's the biggest town in the district. But I guess that's probably not what Mr. Jervis was hoping for. But we'll see. It's still early, as they say. The other 2 races that we were following pretty closely here was the district just north of that, the Bennington-Rutland 1 district. That includes the towns of Dorset, Danby, Landgrove, Peru, and Mount Tabor. That's kind of an interesting district because the incumbent representative, Linda Joy Sullivan, opted not to run for re-election. She had served for 3 terms. It's basically been a Republican-leaning district over the years. Since about 2000, until 2016, they had sent Republican candidates, including Representative Patty Comline, who was a House minority leader for the Republican Party, and before that, Walter Freed, who was the last Speaker of the House, was from Dorset. Then Linda Joy Sullivan, who was a Democrat, flipped that seat in 2016. But it's definitely a district that could go either way. And so this year, 2 newcomers are running. One gentleman named Bill Giotti, who's from Mount Tabor, a lifelong resident from there, and a newcomer, Michael Rice, a Democrat, was running. And no results in yet. Definitely a race that could go either way. And we had both of them into our studio for a debate. And that was kind of interesting. We had I should have said we had Mr. Jervis and Kathleen James and Seth Bongartz in for a discussion also in our studio, which is quite interesting, actually. Got into an interesting conversation about the January 6th event, which Mr. Jervis had attended in Washington, although he's very careful to say that he hadn't gone into the Capitol or taken part in any of the violence that took place that day. The 3rd race we're watching is just to the south of us, the Shaftesbury-Sunderland district, Bennington 3. Incumbent David Durfee has a comfortable lead over his Republican challenger, Victor Harwood. I just saw some numbers on the Secretary of State's website, which indicates that Dave is going to be, I think, comfortably in the lead. We also had them in for a discussion as well. The 4th race we're following down here is the Bennington County Sheriff's race, which is kind of interesting. The same 3 candidates who ran, well, not quite. well, the same three candidates who ran in the primary, in the Democratic Party primary, are in the general election. The winning candidate in the Democratic primary obviously is in the race. One of the other candidates switched parties to run as a Republican, and another switched part but ran as an independent. Um, so it's kind of a replay of the primary in a strange way. That race attracted a fair amount of interest down here as well. The incumbent Chad Schmidt is not running for re-election. He became sort of well known because there was evidence to suggest that he had been spending a lot of his time in Tennessee and was kind of working remotely when that hadn't been agreed to in advance. Let's put it that way. So that became kind of interesting. So those are the ones we were following pretty closely down here.
It sounds great, and glad to hear you are also hosting some debates or forums with candidates. I know that's something a lot of public access centers try to do. Really, bring the candidates in and let them share their thoughts. So glad to hear that you guys are doing that as well. And so, what about statewide? Keeping it brief, what were some of the statewide races that y'all are watching currently?
Thanks to Andrew McKeever for giving us that interview and letting us know what's going on in Southern Vermont. Let's go back to a little recap. It sounds like we have some more results coming in. Sounds like we have all of Burlington in so far, so that will help us see a few more things about this here. Burlington High School still firmly in the yes column.
Yeah, still maintaining a lead there. Looks like they're going to get a new high school.
Yep, that's how it's looking. And CSWD, Murph, we got 9 out of 25 reporting, and we are still a firm yes.
The Communications Union District, still only 1 out of 5 South Burlington reporting there with the 85% yes.
Yep. And it sounds like we don't have a lot of other results coming in yet, but we'll check in with it soon. I'm going to take a look at this, the Vermont Public website here. They've been helping us out with some of these, some of the information for Prop 5 and Prop 2.
Yeah, so as a reminder, Prop 2 is the amendment to the Constitution to remove language relating to slavery, and Prop 5, the reproductive rights amendment language.
And this is AP estimates, 12% of votes counted, but for Prop 2, we have 88% in the yes column, 11% no, and then for Prop 5, 75% in the yes column and 24% no.
So it's, I mean, kind of a low number reporting, but really strong leads for yes.
Yep.
I think, the tenor and dialogue that I've heard over the last couple of months are generally supportive of both of those measures.
Yeah.
There's definitely some opposition. I think more to Prop 5 than Prop 2, but it sounds like they are trending as expected to pass.
Yep. And we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks to Vermont Public for collecting that information for us. Let's check in. We talked with voters today about some of the other ballot items, some of the proposals and the various ballot items they're seeing on in the polls today. So let's check in with Exit Voices and see what they had to say.
For me personally, I'm very excited about our constitutional amendments about banning slavery and reproductive choice. So those are very, very fundamental to our rights, and I'm really excited for those. Having a bond measure to modernize our recycling facility is also really key and really important for the health of Vermont and the health of our planet, and making it a lot easier for Vermonters to do what we want to be doing.
The one about guaranteeing reproductive rights is really important.
Prop 5, I think it's a regulation where our legislators aren't doing their job. It kind of spins around and continuously goes back to the courts to decide. And then in the end, it's in the best interest of the state. So if the courts can't decide, the state gets to decide still. So is it really keeping the government out of our personal decisions? So I think it needs more work.
I supported both of the amendments. The slavery one to me is a minor fix. If it's important to some people that we change that that legal gap, I'm fine with that. I don't think it's really going to change a lot of things. The reproductive one, I think, is going to be important going forward. Who knows what's going to happen in many years, decades forward, how Vermont's going to, skew left or right. So I think that's really important to get that in the Constitution.
Well, I think the Vermont Constitution items both were very, very important items. The anti-slavery item, I'm a huge supporter of that. I've often gone to the conference over at the John Brown Center in New York, and it's a huge issue, and we need to correct our history.
Definitely no on Article 22. I'm a pro-lifer. I feel the execution of children's wrong. And I just believe in life. Life and liberty, pursuit of happiness. Typical American.
As long as that baby hasn't taken its first breath, I think it's okay.
I'm very excited that the Reproductive Liberties Amendment is on the ballot, and I'm very optimistic that it's going to pass. And I'm also very excited that Vermont will hopefully finally be ending slavery.
I think everybody should be able to, live freely and not be required to work for, not any compensation. And I think it's pretty reprehensible.
Well, it looks like our country's going in the wrong direction, and people have to come and speak out for what they believe in, and I believe in a woman's right to choose for themselves, and anything else is an abomination.
But on the Essex ballot, there was a measure for joining the Winooski Valley Parks District, which I didn't realize was on the ballot, and I was very excited to see it.
Article 22, I voted no. I believe that the baby in the womb is a human being that has a right to life, just like every one of us. I think women have a right to their bodies and their health care, and I agree with that, but this issue deals with a life separate from the woman and is not given a chance if they're terminated.
I can understand why it needs to be updated for the time. I just hope that the original text doesn't get lost, because understanding the context in which it was written is very important, like why those things are there. And I'm actually interested to see how the prohibition against indentured servitude gets played out in the courts.
Oh, I came up to vote this morning because I have already voted, and I needed to vote for the Chittenden Solid Waste District building.
Gotcha. So it was important for you to come in person even though you had already voted on the rest of the ballots.
Absolutely. I'm in for recycling.
Yeah, all of the Constitution, the Vermont Constitution changes that I saw seem really important, especially reproductive liberty and the abolishment of slavery. It seemed very important to just make sure that my voice was heard.
Ballot initiative, making sure that reproductive liberty is continuing and that there's no slavery listed.
What was it, the number 22, the reproductive rights? I thought that was pretty important to establish that as part of our state constitution to protect those rights. Yeah.
I'm voting no on both of them.
Yeah, I feel so terrible about this abortion thing. They're making such a funny thing about it, and it's not. We're talking about a live child that's being killed. It's important. That's life. And I don't know if they even feel pain then. It's just before they got to have a time at least. It shouldn't be just before they're born that happens. It's too terrible.
Thanks to Travis and Navarro for those interviews this morning. We have a few races that are getting pretty close here. So let's take a look back at our election module and take a look at first. Let's do these Chittenden County races. A lot of unopposed races here.
Yeah, so Sarah George for State's Attorney, Gregory Glennon for Probate Judge, and then the two seats for Assistant Judge, Suzanne Brown and Connie Kane Ramsey.
Mm-hmm. And then going down to High Bailiff, the only contested race among them, we have Michael Major, Democratic Republican, with 73%, and James Mallon with 26%. 6 out of 17 reporting, but Major
It's a strong lead.
It's a very strong lead. Yeah.
It's very promising for Michael Major there.
Yep. And yeah, let's return to some of these ballot items. Also having a lot of districts reporting.
We've got 6 out of 8 here on the high school bond. Still 75%. Still a huge lead. I mean, it sounds to me like they're passing this and they're gonna move forward with that project.
Yep, likely to pass here. Then let's take a look at the CSWD MRF bond. We have 10 out of 25 reporting, but once again,
still a huge lead.
Wide lead, yep, 80%.
The Communications Union District, still just the 1 out of 5 reporting.
Yep, so that's South Burlington, but it looks like South Burlington is pretty firmly in the yes column on that.
So a lot of yeses on our local ballot items. It looks like
lots of ballot items that are coming down with strong support.
Strong support, and I would say that high school bond vote may be a little bit controversial. It's a huge dollar amount that the city and that voters are so far supporting.
Yep.
Something that we've been watching, I think, regionally.
Yeah, and we have an interview at Hula with Burlington Mayor Moreau Weinberger. He has some thoughts about the BHS bond and how it's trending. So let's check in with Moreau.
Thank you so much, Studio A. I'm joined tonight here at Hula with Burlington Mayor Moreau Weinberger. Moreau, how are you feeling tonight?
Well, this is a great night for Vermont. We've had a vote on 2 really significant constitutional questions. Just a few moments ago, we saw Senator Leahy kind of hand off the torch to Senator-elect Welch. Both of them are men I've worked with and known since I was a kid, worked for a long time, and we've just elected the first woman to Congress from Vermont. So that's sort of the overall tenor of the evening, and then on top of that, we've gotten some very good news that Burlingtonians, it appears, have decisively come down in favor of building a new high school, which, I'm very excited about.
You can definitely feel the excitement here tonight, and with 6 out of 8 Burlington wards reporting on that Burlington High School bond vote, it's looking likely that it will pass. And now, what does this mean for Burlington residents?
Well, it means that we've got an answer to really one of the biggest challenges we have. A city, certainly a great city like Burlington, needs a permanent high school. The district has done a great job working with the state, really being very resourceful to set up a temporary high school upon the decision that the old high school had to be abandoned. But everyone knew that was, my daughter goes there. It's a temporary situation. We need a 21st century high school for our students, and I think everyone involved in this was very conscious that we were bringing this forward to voters at a challenging economic time, when we're experiencing inflation unlike anything we've seen in years, when there's just great financial uncertainty. And in that context, it is really remarkable, I think, that, and very clear where Burlingtonians' values are, that they have come down decisively in favor of making this investment in a permanent high school.
That's great. Now, and really quickly, what's the next steps for Burlington High School now that the bond has passed?
Yeah, well, that's a great point. It's the work is far from done. I mean, what this does mean is that the design and construction teams, of course, can move forward full speed to try to be in construction by next fall, which is their goal. What it also means is that the school district, the commissioners, city councilors, and I are very committed to making good on what we said to voters, which is that we're going to continue to work very hard for the next 3 years as this building is being designed and constructed, to do everything we can to bring down the ultimate cost to Burlington taxpayers. It would be really wrong for Burlingtonians alone to have to pay for what is going to be a great regional facility serving hundreds of non-Burlington students. It would be wrong for Burlingtonians alone to have to pay for these environmental cleanup costs, which, the Burlingtonians weren't the ones that made this pollution. So we have a lot of work ahead, but what's very exciting coming out of tonight is to know that this project is going to get done, and our kids are going to have a great 21st century high school for the decades ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Moreau. Looking forward to seeing those next steps play out with the high school. Thank you so much. Back to you, Studio A.
And there we have the Burlington High School bond numbers. Still looking like a resounding yes, 6 out of 8. Yeah.
Sounds like Mayor Weinberger's excited, and I'm sure many residents are as well, looking at that support numbers.
Yeah. And let's check in with our state Senate and House races. Just go down the line, see what we have so far. Still looking like a strong lead for Phil Baruth, Martine Gulick, and Tanya Vyosky, but a really good showing from Infinite Collegiate.
Yeah, more of a newcomer to this sort of race and also an independent. There's a pretty good spread here, but looks like our incumbent is likely to return.
Yep, and likely to become president pro tempore of the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good for our area.
Yes, yes.
In the Southeast District, Ginny Lyons, long-term incumbent,
Yeah.
she is leading at 28%, close follow with Thomas Chittenden, and then 25% for Keisha Ram-Hinsdale, Dean Rollin and Rowan St. Mart at 9.6 and 8.4 respectively.
Yep, looking like incumbent still pretty strong in Chittenden Southeast. And here's the Chittenden North race, so which is still a close one. Leland Morgan by a hair here.
Yeah, this is super interesting. I'm sure that both parties are closely watching this race to see how it turns out.
Yeah, still only 2 out of 5 reporting on that one, so we still have more people coming in. We can take a look at which towns specifically are coming in on that one. But that still an ongoing race, not close at all.
We'll keep the night interesting.
Yes.
In Richmond, we have Yana Brown, Democratic incumbent, moving forward unopposed.
Yep. And let's see, we have Jericho. We have 2 seats, Trevor Squirrel and ID Graining. Going to move through some of these unopposed seats quickly, get into some of these local ones. We have Noah Hyman, unopposed in South Burlington, one of these Democratic unopposed seats that are coming in. There's quite a few of them.
There are, but it's important to track in case there's write-ins or something. You never know what could happen.
Right, that's right. And here we got the Burlington district. We got Tiff and Gabrielle Stebbins returning to the legislature over Tom Licata so far. Still need some more folks reporting.
Barbara Rachelson returning, Mary Catherine Stone, newcomer, but 2 seats unopposed essentially. And same for this other Burlington District 15 with Brian Sheena returning. Jill Kerwinski returning as well, and Kate Logan, and Emma Mulvaney-Stanek also returning.
Yeah, Burlington and South Burlington both a lot of unopposed candidates this year. Most of the opposed legislative seats were in Winooski, Essex Junction. Those were most of the contests.
More northern, and it also feels like maybe more where, I shouldn't say that, but I really do think that the redistricting and the changing makeup of these districts has had an impact there on who's willing to run or who wants to run.
Right, and be interesting to see that going down the road. We still have some other. And this one is a opposed one in Milton. We have Julia Andrews over Allison Duquette, the Democrat.
2 out of 2 reporting, so it looks like Julia Andrews is likely moving forward.
That's right.
In Chittenden Franklin, Chris Taylor, Republican challenger, in the lead at 59% over Chris Mattos, the Republican incumbent. Emily Hecker, the Democrat, is currently in second at 21%.
It's very interesting. 2 newcomers, a Republican and a Democrat, over the Republican incumbent.
Yeah, that's definitely a shakeup there.
Yeah, very interesting.
There's a lot of, it looks like there is going to be a lot of changes in our State House this year.
And we will also, at the end of the night, have some changes to our federal delegation. We have Peter Welch giving a speech at the Democratic Party. They're calling it their victory speech. So let's see what Peter Welch has to say.
Thank you all so much. First of all, I want to thank my wife, Margaret, for all she's done. And these are, everybody behind me is the big Irish family and friends. They have only begun to misbehave. And I want to thank Ryan McLaren, my campaign manager. And Ryan, I want to thank you and our whole campaign staff, which is the best in the entire country. And I do also want to thank again, and I can't stop thanking him enough, Patrick Leahy and his wife Marcelle. 48 years of service with integrity, with honesty, with standing up for democracy every single day of those 48 years. Patrick and Marcelle, thank you so much. And Bernie Sanders, my partner for 16 years. Bernie was so shy and so holding back that it took him 1 hour to endorse me after I announced. Bernie, thank you very much for that endorsement. You know, it's an extraordinary time in our democracy. We know that. We're excited about the outcome of the election here for the U.S. Senate. But this election is in the shadow of what happened on January 6th. And as we are here today celebrating this moment, there's votes being cast, there's votes being counted, but it's uncertain whether all election results will be accepted. And I was there when the Capitol was attacked and the shot was fired and the doors were broken down. And everyone was dismayed because this election, unlike any other election, has democracy right front and center on the ballot. And our mission here in Vermont is to restore and defend and protect the democracy that we value. So, a lot of people have asked me, Peter, you know, how do you do it? Or how can we all do it after what happened on January 6th? And you know, the answer to that, we don't pick the times we're in. We don't pick the challenges those times present. The choice we make is to face those challenges, whatever they may be. That's what we do. And you know, I have so much confidence that we Vermonters will do that again, and our example will be a beacon of hope for the rest of the country. Look at our history. No, look at our collective history. This is all of us. Ours was the first state in its Constitution to ban slavery. And when our country was riven by the Civil War, it was Vermonters more than any other by population who enlisted in the Union cause to save our Union and to ban and abolish slavery. And in the midst of that, with all those challenges, it was a predecessor of Patrick Leahy, Justin Morrill, who created the land-grant college where there was a fundamental commitment to the educational opportunity of everyday people, Vermonters who wanted to get ahead. And you know, when it came to the question of whether every citizen should have the opportunity to marry the person that person loves, it was the Vermont General Assembly with Republicans and Democrats who said the law of this state is you have the right to marry the person you love. And even fast for Patrick Leahy, preceded by George Aiken, who said it all when he said about Vietnam, a war that was misguided, was tearing our country apart, causing heartbreak and loss of life, said we should declare victory and come home. And who was the senator that succeeded him and cast his first vote to end funding for the Vietnam War? That was Patrick Leahy. So what we've seen in our history is that we don't pick the problems, we face the problems. And you know, some folks think it's like a farmer farms in the weather that the farmer wants. No way. It's the weather you have. And it's the problems we have. And a big problem and a challenge we face is democracy, and we are going to face it. And you know what's also special about Vermont? It's the way we do democracy. It's the small d democracy. It's mutual respect. It's humility that understands that a person that you disagree with, maybe even vehemently, is most likely guided by the same aspiration you have to make this a better state. We understand that listening is more important than talking, and that by having an approach where we seek the common ground for the common good, we can make a better and more just society. So I got to tell you, I am so excited about the challenges ahead and how we can face them. And I'm looking forward to doing that with who I know will be our next member of Congress, Becca Balint, the first woman to represent us in Congress. And Becca and Bernie and I are going to be there in the way all Vermonters want to be there. We know that this state that fought for marriage equality, we know that this state that stood up to Joe McCarthy when he was trying to take away our civil liberties, we know that this state that banned slavery in its original constitutional document, we know that this state offers America hope for the future. And with the Vermont way, we can be successful and face the challenges that are before us. And I am so excited to be your representative in the United States Senate to take those Vermont values to Washington. Thank you.
Lots of excitement at Hula tonight. Peter Welch declaring victory.
Yeah, not all of the Vermont towns are reporting, but it's a really strong lead that he has.
Yeah, it's about half reporting, and he has 66.39% over Gerald Malloy's 28.62%. Very strong lead.
Yeah. Big night for Democrats, continuing to hold that seat in the U.S. Senate for Vermont.
Yeah. Very exciting. We have our own Nick Chedley Carter with us. You know, a lot of people are watching, you know, we're watching some of the local stuff, but a lot of people are watching the larger national picture of what the midterm elections are shaping up like. Nick Chedley Carter is going to check in with us and give his views on what's going on around the country. So let's check in with Nick.
Joining us, Nick Carter. You're a Harvard Kennedy School Ash Center Reimagining Democracy Fellow, and we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us tonight. Tell me, like, what are some of the key things happening nationally, specifically with Congress and the House and Senate control?
Well, thanks so much, Jordan, for having me, and also to the service that CCTV Town Meeting Television provides. It's nights like tonight where I think people are reminded of the value of local media and the services that community access provides. You know, it's really remarkable when you think about it, the number of candidates, the number of ballot initiatives that are on the ballot this year at all levels of government. So ranging from control of the United States Congress to state voting rights to marijuana legalization, there is quite a lot going on. And according to the United States Election Assistance Commission, there's somewhere in the ballpark of 176,000 voting precincts or equivalent precincts across the United States. And to make things even more interesting is the decentralized electoral system. So voting rules being decided at the state, county, town, city level. And so having very different voting rules and systems in very close proximity makes for some really interesting dynamics, but it's also a testament to election officials, town clerks, volunteers, and others who make this wonderful process actually work. And frankly, I think for the most part, it's working pretty well. Certainly, there are concerns from across the political spectrum about issues with the voting process, intimidation at the polls. But I think most voters are expecting that their vote will count and that they'll be able to participate in the electoral process. So obviously, everyone is going to be watching what happens with the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, where Republicans just need to pick up a net 5 votes to take control of the U.S. House, which they're highly expected to do, and for a variety of reasons, historical trends, the president's approval rating, the economic condition, and obviously that hasn't been called yet, but a very good reason to think that's going to happen. And then the U.S. Senate, Republicans will just need a net 1 vote pickup to take control of the U.S. Senate. And so election watchers are watching very closely the outcomes of the U.S. Senate races in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and even in next door New Hampshire, where Maggie Hassan's reelection has gotten much closer, especially over the last couple of days. I think it's important that people keep in mind that in some of these really close contested races, we may not know the results for a couple of days. As ballots come in, as results are challenged, you could expect a slew of legal challenges in a few of these races. So it's likely that we might not actually know who's going to control the U.S. House or the Senate for a couple of days, leaving many folks anxious. But additionally, you also have some really interesting and important statewide races. If you think about Arizona, not a lot of similarities with the Senate states, but not entirely. So Arizona is one where you also have a very competitive gubernatorial race, Secretary of State, Attorney General. Go up a little bit to Oregon, where you have an unexpectedly close governor's race. Next door in Nevada, also U.S. Senate, but also a very closely contested governor's race, as well as Secretary of State. Then moving more to the Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where you have really close statewide races, which will have real implications on a variety of policy issues, but also voting dynamics going into the 2024 presidential election. So the stakes are extremely high. Lots of energy and focus has been spent on those states, and we'll see what happens. And lastly, not only do you have candidates running against each other, you also have the democratic process and electoral process itself on the ballot in a few places. So this ranges from the town and city level. So, for example, in Portland, Oregon, voters will be deciding a ranked choice voting proportional representation system for the city of Portland. Next door in Seattle, voters will be deciding between a few different approaches to elections, approval voting, ranked choice voting. And then statewide, you have a voter ID ballot initiative in Arizona, as well as a ballot initiative in Michigan to expand voting options. So not only is it candidates that are being decided, but the process itself is on the ballot in many places across the country. So those are some things that I think a lot of folks are going to be watching tonight, and these will have immediate implications for the many more elections that will be happening in states and communities in 2023, and then of course impacting the next presidential election in 2024.
And so also there are items on the ballot nationally. Can you tell me about some of those ballot initiatives and different things that people should be watching for?
Absolutely. So there's a range of issues ranging from tax policy to abortion rights to voting rights. The voting rights is where I've been specifically focused on. So, for example, in Arizona, Proposition 309, which essentially relates to voter ID, in that it requires birth and government identification number for people voting by mail, and creates new requirements to participate in the vote by mail process. In Arkansas, interestingly, you have something that is more related to the threshold necessary for ballot initiatives. So raising the threshold to 60% in order to move a ballot initiative forward. And then Proposal 2 in Michigan. This would create a 9-day early voting period with drop boxes. It ensures that military ballots are counted if postmarked by election, and allows for an affidavit instead of ID for in-person voting. There's also some provisions to protect against harassment at voting locations. So that just gives you a range of the types of democracy-related ballot initiatives that are being decided. And additionally, it even gets further granular. So, for example, Dane County, Wisconsin, has a ballot initiative specifically for that for that county. I don't believe it's binding, but it essentially gives a recommendation to the state legislature around marijuana legalization. So even just at the county level, voters will be deciding specific ballot initiatives, as they're doing as well in the state of Vermont.
And just kind of to wrap it up, and is there anything that you think is really different from this midterm election compared to the other elections, and how does it compare to prior years?
For good or for bad, I do think more people are recognizing the importance of what happens in between presidential elections. And there's much more of an awareness and enthusiasm. I do think turnout is going to be high. I think it's going to be high for all parties. So I'm not sure if high turnout is a guaranteed win for either side. I think you're going to see high turnout across the country. And I think, thinking about the next year in 2023, that there's going to be plenty of municipal elections in cities and towns. You're going to have special elections, and the realization that democracy is very much a 365-day, all the time activity. And I think that's something that is different about this cycle. And so I guess we'll see what happens.
We will see what happens. Thank you so much, Nick Carter, for joining us. And we're going to go back to Jordan and Christine in the studio.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks to Nick and Jordan Mitchell for that interview, talking about the national race. A lot of people watching it very closely.
Yeah, it's big. Interesting to see that victory speech so early in the night, but with the numbers that are coming in, seems appropriate.
Yep. But let's, we're mostly a lot of Chittenden County stuff here, so let's zoom back down and let's do a little recap of what we've had come in so far, our local elections numbers. Starting at, with some of the ballot items, we do have Burlington High School. It's still a yes. Looking pretty good. Maybe we can look at the ballot items real quick because we have a few additions here. We have
the recycling facility, the
Yep.
expansion there. That's
Still
a
looking
strong yes so far, 14 out of 25.
Yep. We got another one come in for the CUD from Essex Town. That was a yes vote for the Communications Union District. So two different districts reporting, South Burlington and Essex, both voting in favor of it. That means there is a Communications Union District.
It does, and those other member towns can also vote yes. They can join later, just needed 2 to get that started off the ground.
Yeah. And let's take a look. Let's hop over to State Senate, see where we are there.
So for the Central District, we've got 13 out of 18 reporting. Phil Baruth still in the lead, followed by Martine LaRoque-Gulick, Tanya Vyovsky, and Infinite Coqueleasure with a 15% showing.
13 of 18, Infinite Coqueleasure still, getting more votes, so still really strong showing. Doing a great job so far. Right now, it's still looking like it's Phil, Tanya, and Martine going to the state senate.
Yeah, which it's kind of funny that Martine is she's like second right now, right? After she just eked her way into the primary.
Right, and Tanya's sort of an incumbent in some ways. At least she's a known person. She was a representative.
Yeah.
Coming in.
So the numbers aren't playing out maybe how you'd guess, but still kind of the top three.
Yeah. Maybe let's check in with Chittenden Southeast, still incumbents, all the Democratic and Republicans looking pretty strong here.
Yeah, 6 out of 12 reporting, and not much change since the last time we checked in.
Yep. Chittenden North, still very close.
Oh, Irene has eked out ahead.
Yeah.
51.4% to Leland Morgan's 48.5.
And 3 out of 5 reporting.
So it's neck and neck. We're watching this go back and forth throughout the night.
Yeah. Looking forward to checking in on that. That'll be very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's look at some of these state representative races. We have a few that we've had some more come in that we think are looking pretty close. In Burlington, in Chittenden 13, we have Tiff Bloomley and Gabby Stebbins ahead of Tom Licata. That looks.
So again, these incumbents are doing well here for this one. 2 out of 2 reporting. So this looks solid, like they will remain in their seats.
Yep. Going further down the list here, let's go to Winooski. Let's check out Winooski. There it is.
So interesting here, we have Taylor Small, the incumbent, at 42%, and then Daisy Rebecca, New Democrat, at 43%.
That's very interesting, yeah.
Independent Jordan Matt with 13.9.
Yep. And looking at some of these other contested seats that we have here, not a lot of other contested races that we can call yet here. Once again, in the legislature, a lot of unopposed seats. Essex District, Leonora Dodge and Ray Garofano. That's a pretty strong lead, 33% for Leonora Dodge, 30% for Ray Garofano, both Democrats, over Maurice Dunbar and Dennis White.
So here again, we see the incumbent likely to retain their seat.
Yeah, that's right.
1 out of 2 reporting there. And then in Essex 24, Alyssa Black, the Democrat incumbent, 63% lead over Roger Drury, the Republican challengers, 36%. So another one likely to retain that seat.
Yep, looking like a strong one there. See, in Milton, we got 1 seat, Julia Andrews, Democrat, over Allison Duquette, the Republican. We got 2 of 2 reporting, so that looks pretty solid as well.
In Chittenden Franklin District, here's the one where we don't see the incumbent likely to stay in. So Chris Matos was in this seat as a Republican, 19% of the vote, and we have Chris Taylor, a challenger Republican, with 59%, a substantial lead. And then for that second seat, likely Emily Hecker, the Democrat, with 21%.
Very interesting.
For probate judge, we have Gregory Glennon, 4 out of 17 reporting, but unopposed. So.
And then a lot of these statewide, these Chittenden County ones are unopposed, except for that high bailiff. Let's check in with that high bailiff here.
Michael Major, 73% to James Mellon's 26%. We are 8 out of 17 reporting. So he's looking quite well ahead at this point in the evening.
We've still got a few more of these representative seats that we're looking for. We're still looking at that Williston race, hoping that that's going to come in. Still looking at some of the other Essex races as well. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Until then, let's check in back with the Dems at Hula. Bernie Sanders stopped by to give a speech, and we can check in with them. Let's see what he had to say.
On behalf of my wife Jane, who everybody knows, and my entire family that is scattered around here, we just want to thank Pat Leahy for his years of dedication and service to our state. I am delighted, more than delighted, to have as a new colleague in the Senate, Peter Welch, who I am confident is going to do a great job. And before the evening is out, I am confident Becca Balint will be our new Congresswoman. I don't have to tell anybody here that these are tough times for our country. We are fighting to make sure that it is women who control their own bodies, not the government. We are fighting for our kids and grandchildren so that the planet that they live in will be healthy and habitable, because we're going to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry, transform our energy system. And we're here tonight to remind Trump and his friends that in a democracy, sometimes you lose elections. Hey, Trump, you lost that election. And at a time when over 60% of our people nationally are living paycheck to paycheck, when 85 million Americans have no health insurance, when bright young kids can't afford to go to college, when we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, when 500,000 Americans are homeless, what we are saying right now is we are prepared to take on the billionaire class and create an economy that works for all, not just the few. We are all proud that Vermont has a long history of fighting for justice, whether it's racial justice, whether it is social justice, whether it is environmental justice or economic justice. And I am confident that with Peter alongside of me in the Senate and Becker in the House, we are going to become a model for what this country can be in terms of fighting for ordinary people, not just the people on top. So let me thank all of you, not only for the work you have done to help elect Peter and Becca, but to understand the struggle continues tomorrow and the day after and the day after. We are taking on enormously powerful forces, but the stakes are enormous. We're fighting for the future of our kids. Jane and I have 7 grandchildren. We're fighting for our grandchildren and your grandchildren. Let's go forward together. Let's do it.
Thanks from the Democratic Party, checking in with Bernie Sanders there. Let's check it. We haven't talked about the U.S. Congress race for a little while, so let's see what that's looking like on the Secretary of State's website. Let's see. We have Becca Balint in the lead with a little under 60% of the vote, with Leah Madden with 28%.
Yeah. So the independent who gained the Republican nomination. Looks like most of those voters are sticking with that. Erica Reddick at about 4% here. We've got about 140 out of 283 towns reporting, but pretty solid lead for Becca Balint at this point in the evening.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to hear a speech from her pretty soon here. It's interesting, I was wondering if the conservative vote would go towards Erica Reddick possibly, because the more traditionally conservative candidate, but it does, like you said, looks like they're sticking with Leah Madden across the state.
I think this is reflective of folks are often concerned about using their vote on an independent, on a non-major party, and there's always that question of, am I wasting my vote, or is it the right thing to do? I heard some folks at the polls today talking about 2 parties, not their favorite, but they feel like that's what they're working with here. So not sure what's underneath of that, but Leah Madden having a really strong showing for Republicans.
Yep, very interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see if we hear some speeches from any of the candidates later on in the night. But let's take a look at Burlington. We have all of our Burlington results in, so we can just go down the list here, see for some of these. Let's start with the state representatives, and let's just go one by one and see who Burlington's legislature is going to look like. Starting off with the Chittenden 13 race, That's Tiff Bloomley, Tom Licata, and Gabrielle Stebbins. Tiff Bloomley and Gabby Stebbins are looking like they're going to the legislature, returning to the legislature.
Looks like we're having a little trouble getting our module aligned there.
And then after that, we have some unopposed folks. Oh, there we go. There we got Burlington District 13. We have 47% for Tiff and 43% for Gabby. Over Tom Licata is 9%. All wards reporting.
District 14, Barbara Rachelson and Mary Catherine Stone moving forward.
We have Brian Chena and Troy Hedrick, both Progressive Democrats, going to the legislature. Troy Hedrick new to the legislature.
Brian Chena, been representing for a while.
Yep.
In District 16, Jill Kerwinski, Democrat. She's been in there, Speaker of the House, and now Kate Logan, Progressive Democrat, joining her in that district.
Interesting, and if things hold for the Chittenden Central State Senate seat, Phil Baruth may be President pro tempore of the Senate, and then 2 Burlingtonians at the top of the Vermont legislature.
Yeah, something I've often heard chided, that Burlington maybe has too much power, too much representation. Mm-hmm. This is also where a lot of the people live, so I'll be looking forward to seeing, if that's our leadership in the State House, what do they do working together in service of our region here?
Yeah. We have Carol Odie and Robert Hooper, unopposed, returning to the legislature, both incumbents. We have Emma Mulvaney Stanek as well, Progressive Democrat, unopposed, returning to the legislature. And
I think that's it for Burlington.
I think that's it for our state reps in Burlington, but let's return to the ballot items real quick, just checking in. I'm thinking the BHS bond is still going to look pretty strong here. It had a big lead before, so let's see what we got.
Yeah, with all Burlington districts reporting,
yep,
we had 75-80% support for that, so it looks like that bond is going to move forward.
Yep. We'll give a moment to check in with that here. But that's our main one from Burlington for bond items. All the other ones are statewide bond items. But we can take a look at, maybe we can take a look at some of the polling. We had some people going around interviewing people in Burlington and around the area. Let's return to our Exit Voices interviews, asking people about the redistricting that happened for this session.
How about any candidates in particular that you were excited to see on the ballot?
I'm always happy to vote for Peter Welch. I think he's been doing great work, and I'll be happy to see him in the Senate.
No one person, I think, can fully encompass somebody's beliefs and everything. Depending on what some of their opinions were, I voted Democratic, I voted Republican, I voted Independent. I think there's an element of, Vermont's such a small place, there's a good chance you probably are on a first name basis with at least one of the candidates.
The main one is just, I want the Democrats to still remain on the seat.
Irene Renner was one. I'm a Democrat, but I voted for Phil Scott because I know Phil, okay, and he's a good guy, and I like, I'd like him to be a little stronger, he knows this, on guns control.
Were there any particular candidates that you feel can bring about that change that you'd like to see?
Republicans.
So one person in particular, Taylor Small, local Winooski resident, is really kind of here for us. And both she and Daisy, who's also representing Winooski, they're in favor of just cause eviction, which is like a first step that we really need in order to have the working class be able to stay in Vermont.
Peter Welch, Becca Ballant, those are the two that I think of first and foremost.
I really liked both Molly Gray and Becca Ballant, so there's no issues there. We have wonderful choices here in Vermont.
Election? Not particularly. I just voted pretty progressively. Yep.
I'm very supportive of my local. I always think local first. My 2 representatives, Gabrielle Stebbins and Tiff Bloomley, I think have been doing a great job, and so I'm excited to support them.
about this year?
Yeah, I'm excited about Becca Ballin and Dave Zuckerman. Both, I think, are excellent. Tiff Bloomley from my district. I'm excited about all of them. They, I think, have good liberal progressive politics that I believe in, especially in the climate right now where I feel like very anti-liberal kind of politics are on the rise. I am excited to have those voices representing me.
I've got all my candidates lined up, and I know how I'm going to vote on all the issues. Yeah, it's pretty cut and dried.
Gotcha. Well,
Thanks to folks for doing those exit interviews this morning. Always good to hear from people at the polls. We've got an interview with one of the folks that we just mentioned, Kate Logan, new Burlington representative, progressive Democrat, going to the legislature at the Democratic Party at Hula. So let's check in with her.
thank you so much, Jordan and Christine. I'm joined with Kate Logan, who's just been elected as a Burlington State Representative. Kate, how are you feeling tonight?
I feel great. We knew it was an uncontested race. We worked really hard in the primary this summer to secure our spot. Knew that we were going uncontested into the general, but it still feels great to know that I'll be going in as one of the most progressive legislators to ever serve the Old North End and downtown of Burlington in the legislature.
That's wonderful. And looking forward to this next biennium, what are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, a lot of what I hope to accomplish in the next biennium depends on what happens across the state. In all 150 House seats, I've worked as an advocate in the State House for years and have worked really hard on issues where the governor vetoed the legislation that we were able to pass. And more often than not, we weren't able to overturn the governor's veto. And it looks like we're going into another biennium with Governor Scott as our governor. And so I'm really interested. I'm looking to see what happens in all of the other House races and in the Senate to know what the composition is and the general political orientation. But in general, I think that we need to move really aggressively to a more equitable and sustainable economy, kind of across the board. Child care, education from birth to college, health care, energy, you name it. If it's something that working people are struggling to pay for, housing on a daily basis, then Vermont should be doing more, just like every other state in the country needs to do right now while we're struggling at the federal level to get all the stuff that we know we need.
And is there anything else you'd like your constituents to know?
I would love my constituents to know that they can reach me at my website, www.kateloganforhouse.com. You can find my email address and my social media there. I would love you to sign up for my social media and my email list so that I can communicate with you, because when it comes time to make a decision in the legislature and take testimony on issues that are impacting the people in the Chittenden 16 district, then I want to hear from you. I'll be reaching out to you, but I want you to reach out to me. And I would love you to come visit the State House. I've learned that there are many legislators who get elected to office who have never actually been to Montpelier and visited the State House. So I'd love to bring Burlington to Montpelier so that you can share your story on issues that matter to you in the State House.
That sounds great, Kate, and we're looking forward to seeing how the rest of the races shake up and the steps that you take in the next biennium. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Back to you, Studio A.
Thanks to Emily and Kate at Hula at the Democratic Party. Kate Logan, Progressive Democrat, going to the legislature. All of our Burlington districts are in. You can always check out any of these results yourself at results.townmeeting.tv. That webpage is being uploaded or it's being updated constantly. That's what we're referencing here as well. So let's return to some of the statewide races here. We haven't talked about the governor or the lieutenant governor for a little while. So let's take a look at some of those races. Looking at the Secretary of State's website, we have Phil Scott in the lead with 70% over Brenda Siegel's 22%, 160 reporting.
There's a really strong lead for Governor Scott once again.
Yep.
Independents Kevin Hoyt, Peter Duval, and Bernard Peters down there with 2.2, 1.5, and 0.8% respectively.
You know, Phil Scott, a lot of support amongst even Democrats and independents. I cut one of these exit voices and heard somebody talking about, you know, voted Democrat across the board except for Phil Scott. So a lot of support. You know, one of the most popular governors in the country.
In the nation, yeah. Might speak a little bit to him being more of a moderate Republican, I think. Yep. He had really strong showing in his last re-election as well, and has just been generally favored in Vermont. Yeah. It's a nice balance potentially to have. It's an interesting balance to have a state house that is a strong Democratic majority and then a governor's office with a Republican lead.
Yeah, kind of an interesting situation in this state, which looks like it's going to continue.
Yeah, and we'll see what that balance looks like when it comes to the lieutenant governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have David Zuckerman running for that seat again with the Democratic nomination, and Joe Benning on the Republican side of the ticket. So it looks like Zuckerman is still in the lead at 50% to 42% for Joe Benning.
But this one's still pretty close. We've seen some lopsided numbers this evening, but not so much this time. Zuckerman in the lead. This was seen as possibly one of the more contested races. It still does look like Zuckerman is pulling ahead 50% to Joe Benning's 42%.
It does. I think it's a little bit counter to, you know, Zuckerman is not technically an incumbent, but he has held this role before. And in those state Senate and House rep races, we saw Democratic incumbents taking strong leads to return to those roles. Not quite the same situation we're seeing here. So this one's a little bit more interesting to watch.
Yes, and we'll continue to check in with that because we're a little over half reporting, but we still have more folks coming in, and with the closest of that, it could change a little bit. We'll see.
There could be some shifts there.
Yeah. We have a few more statewide races that we could look at real quick. We could take a look at Mike Piechek for state treasurer over H. Brooke Page.
60% for Mike Piechek there, 34% for H. Brooke Page. Mike Piechek, the Democrat, and H. Brooke Page, the Republican there.
Yep, H. Brooke Page, the perennial Republican candidate, runs anytime a Republican's not stepping forward to run for one of these offices. H. Brooke Page runs.
He fills the gap.
Yes, we've had him on many times. We had him on this season as well. Wasn't able to beat out Mike Piechek on this one. Let's look at Secretary of State here. Once again, a Brooke Page race against Sarah Copeland-Hanzis. Sarah Copeland-Hanzis ahead with almost 60% of the vote.
And she's coming out of the state house to move into this role, taking over this seat for Jim Condos. Different perspective here, right? She hasn't worked in sort of the Secretary of State side of things, but has the government operations perspective to bring to the role.
Right. And beat out Chris Winters in the primary, who was Jim Condos's chief of staff.
Yeah, so that was another one of those primaries that we were watching, a little bit surprising in the end there.
Yes. Let's go to Auditor of Accounts here. Doug Hoffer against Rick Morton. Doug Hoffer with almost 60% of the vote against Rick Morton's 35%. And we can round it off here with Attorney General. We have Charity Clark, the Democrat, over Michael Tagliava, the Republican. Charity Clark with 60%, Michael Tagliava with 35%.
You know, all of these statewide races they've got roughly like a 60-30 split, somewhere in that range. Feels a little bit reflective of the general population, perhaps.
Right.
Where we're seeing much closer and further apart spreads in the local races.
Yeah. And that's interesting thing to notice about that. Let's check in with some more statewide analysis. We can check in with Kevin Ellis, who's joining Jordan Mitchell in Studio Z. Let's check in to see what he's seeing on the statewide races.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for joining us here to talk about the election and the election results we're getting in tonight. So where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Waterbury, where I'm doing some other election analysis on WDEV. But it's great to be with you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. So, what are some of the state races and some of the local races that you've been watching this evening?
Well, obviously, the election of Peter Welch to be the next U.S. Senator from Vermont, replacing longtime Senator Patrick Leahy, is somewhat historic. And then there is the election of Becca Balint to be the first woman and a gay woman to be Vermont's lone member of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives. That is truly historic, and she, both Welch and Balint, won overwhelmingly. And then Governor Scott, Phil Scott, has won convincingly as well, with a wider margin than I had thought. And so those are the early ones. That one of the local races that I'm keeping my eye on is down in Orange County. There's a spirited challenge by a guy named John Clark against a longtime incumbent, Mark McDonald. McDonald had a stroke recently and couldn't campaign. Clark is way out to the right, is something of an election denier, and has gotten involved in a debate over transgender issues at the local high school. So, we're all looking to see whether election denialism on the national stage infects Vermont at any level. So far, it seems not to have.
And now, at this point in the evening, we're starting to get results. What are some of the trends you're seeing with these results, and how do you think they're impacting during this midterm election?
Phil Scott is winning a fourth term by a very convincing margin. Right now, sort of 70 plus to 20, and that surprised me. The lieutenant governor's race, featuring David Zuckerman, a longtime Chittenden County senator, former two-term lieutenant governor, ran for governor against Governor Scott, lost badly 2 years ago, is now seeking his old lieutenant governor's position against popular and well-respected Republican Joe Benning, not an election denier, but one of the more, I would say, moderate Republicans that still exist in Vermont and New England. Zuckerman's ahead by 12,000 votes at this point. And it seems like that's just too much to make up for a guy with Zuckerman's name recognition and record in Chittenden County.
And is there anything else overall that you think has really been either interesting or surprising, this election?
Well, again, I gotta say, there's a tradition in Vermont that when a governor is running for a fourth term, whether it was Howard Dean, whether it was Jim Douglas, people get tired of
The legislation that we were
after 6 years. At least that's been the pattern. The strength and durability of Phil Scott's reputation in this state, in a hugely Democratic state. I often call Vermont the most liberal state in the country. There is little to no evidence that Trump and MAGA politics are infecting our politics yet. It was tried. It looks to be failing, but
thank you to Kevin Ellis for the statewide analysis. Let's check in with some of let's start up a little recap here. We're getting close to 10 right now, but let's go to our Chittenden State Senate seats. We haven't looked at those for a little while.
Yeah, we're hearing that only in the Chittenden North District, only Georgia is left to report. Is that right?
That's what we've got.
300 vote difference. So it's looking strongly like Irene Renner is going to take the seat over Leland Morgan.
But really close.
Yeah, this is the tightest race we've seen all night, I think.
Yeah, 51% to 48%. Right now we've got a difference of just 300 votes. So really close, but so far looking like Irene. And we will continue getting those results into the night to see if we can get a firm answer on that.
That'll be a tough district for her to represent, having that kind of split, right? She's going to have to do a lot of work to find what are the areas where she didn't meet with voters and where she might in the future.
That's right.
Looking at the Southeast District, we've got 6 out of 12 reporting. Still about what we saw earlier, right? Ginny Lyons, Thomas Chittenden, and Keisha Ram Hinsdale, those incumbents are likely to take these 3 seats over again.
Yep, that's how it's looking. And let's check in here with this Chittenden Central District. Once again, still looking pretty similar to what we saw last time. We have Phil Baruth with 32%, and then Martine Larock-Gulick and Tanya Vyovsky also so far joining him in Chittenden Central, Infinite Colcleisure with 13%.
16 out of 18 reporting, so that's fairly close to done there.
Strong, yep. Yeah. All right, well, speaking of Tanya Vyovsky, we have an interview with her at the Democratic Party, so let's check in with them and see how it's going.
Welcome back to Hula in Burlington with the Vermont Democrats. I'm joined by Tanya Vyovsky, who's a candidate for the Vermont State Senate in the Chittenden Central District. Tanya, how would you describe the feeling in the room tonight?
The feeling in the room tonight is really excited. I mean, people I think are really excited to be sending our first woman congressperson to Washington, and just, I think, really excited for all of the great opportunities we have to put good people in office.
So you served in the Vermont House before this, and now you're jumping to the Senate. Can you describe a little bit about that decision to jump from the House to the Senate and how your work might look a little bit different moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I served in the House, which is 150 people, and when the Senate districts were redrawn, there was an immediate open seat. And then when my mentor, Chris Pearson, decided not to run again, there was a second open seat. And after a lot of conversation with him, we sort of came to the conclusion that in order to continue to have a progressive voice in the House, somebody needed to run for that seat. And as a social worker, I rely on relationships, and it's a lot easier to build relationships with 30 people than it is to build them with 150. So I just felt like I would be able to do more for Vermonters with my skill set in the Senate, and maybe fill Chris Pearson's shoes at least a little bit.
Tanya Vyovsky, candidate for Vermont State Senate. Thank you so much. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you, Tanya. Let's check in with Burlington again. Let's do another Burlington recap here. Checking in with their big item, the Burlington High School.
Yeah, we've got the Burlington numbers in. Looks like that Burlington High School bond vote is passing.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see here, really strong lead on that. 75, almost 76%. That is a resounding yes for that item.
Reporting. That's looks like that's going to happen. And then let's look through our state reps here once again. We have all of our Burlington wards reporting, so we know we can report on that, including some of these unopposed folks. Let's start out here with the Tiff Bloomley, the Chittenden 13 race. We've got Tiff Bloomley and Gabby Stebbins beating out Tom Licata.
They'll be returning to the legislature this year, both Democratic incumbents.
Yep. And then we have Barbara. We have lots of unopposed people going to the legislature this year. We got
Brian Chena and Troy Hedrick will be joining him. Brian Chena returning from previous service.
Yep. We also have Barbara Rachelson, Mary Catherine Stone. We have Jill Krawinski, Kate Logan, who we heard from earlier in the evening.
And we've got our Winooski numbers in here. We have Daisy Brubeco joining Taylor Small.
Yep.
In Essex, we have 2 seats here. So it looks like Ray Garofano, incumbent, returning to a seat, joined by Leonora Dodge. Only 1 out of 2 reporting, but pretty strong leads over the challengers, Maurice Dunbar and Dennis White.
Yeah. In Milton, we have Julie Andrews, Democrat, beating out Allison Duquette, Republican. Pretty close.
Pretty close. 2 out of 2 reporting, though, so it looks like she's in.
Yep. And that's some of the contested seats that we've seen come through. We've reported on a lot of these throughout the night, a lot of recaps. We mentioned Emma Mulvaney-Stanek there real quick. She's returning to Burlington Legislature. We have an interview with her at the Progressive Party at RERAS, so let's check in with Emma. Sorry about that. We'll take a look at that in a moment here. We'll return to our interview with Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. What do you think of the night so far, Christine?
Well, I think there's definitely a trend here of, we saw a lot of new faces coming into these races, but where there are incumbents, we're seeing those folks, for the most part, carry through. So on the whole, this could be a good thing, right? We're getting some new voices, new ideas into the State House, but we still have some of that institutional knowledge and folks who understand the procedure and some of the history of what we've already worked through in the last few years.
Right. And this election season, a lot of new faces, but some races that maybe weren't super competitive, 60%, 30%, a lot of those types of things. Maybe the primary was the more competitive race this year.
Yeah, yep. Very true. And particularly with some of these unopposed seats, a lot in the Burlington, South Burlington area. Not as exciting nights for those folks, but for those of us in maybe Essex, Winooski, Williston, Chittenden North District, it has been something to watch this evening.
Yeah, and we're still collecting results. This could be a later night for a lot of folks. So we were talking earlier this evening about the prevalence of mail-in voting this election. I remember when I was scheduling forums a little while ago, I was thinking about mail-in voting and how much of those mail-in votes were going to come in, but for town meeting day, there weren't as many as expected. For the general election, maybe with more interest than town meeting day, a lot of mail-in votes, and that might have clogged up the polls a little bit.
Yeah, so I definitely saw that in Winooski. You're supposed to bring if you don't vote by mail, bring that ballot in when you vote in person. A lot of folks didn't know about that. So there's some extra logistics there, but definitely feels like the mail ballots actually turned a lot of people out, brought the turnout higher.
And that'll be interesting to see how high the turnout is this season.
Definitely.
We have that Emma Mulvaney-Stanek interview ready for you, so let's check out what they've got over there.
Tonight here on election night. So I'm State Representative Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. I represent Chittenden 17, which is half of the Old North End and half of the New North End here in Burlington.
So what does it mean to you to be a part of the Progressive Party?
Well, I have a long history with the Progressive Party. I ran for City Council back in 2009 and served for 2 terms on the Burlington City Council as a progressive from the Old North End. And then I was the chair for the state party for another 4 years, really helping to recruit a lot of candidates all over the state to run as progressives. And we were really successful in building the party. This was all when Dave Zuckerman was, I mentioned, becoming lieutenant governor for the first time. So it's an exciting moment of growth. And one of the main reasons why I'm a member of the party back then and still today is it really is the alternative to a Democratic Party that, while on paper speaks a lot of values that we have in common, but in action doesn't necessarily move policy that centers working people, centers equity, centers an anti-racist analysis on what we need in Vermont, and really also putting Vermont on the map as a leader in a lot of these policy areas around abortions, around firearms regulation, around issues of economic justice. We have lost that sort of leader spot in the country, and that's why I think it's so important to have progressives on the left flank politically pulling the conversations forward so we can really go back to our days of moving things like marriage equality and being some of the first, because that's what Vermonters really need.
So you've just mentioned plenty of issues that the Progressive Party is working towards constantly. Would you say that there's one issue in particular that you find to be really important during this election specifically?
Well, there's probably 3, but if you want one in particular, I was a labor organizer for many years, working for teachers and support staff in Vermont schools, and so economic justice is really such a bread and butter issue in Vermont, and income inequality has continued to grow. It's harder for people to meet their basic needs even before inflation has happened, and people are still recovering economically from the pandemic. So we have a lot to address and frankly get real about, have real conversations conversations around issues of paid family leave. As a mom of 2 small kids, I'll tell you we have a childcare crisis, not only in what we pay early educators, but having affordable childcare is critically important for families, it's critically important for employers, and it requires public investment. It's a public good, and so we really need to move the needle on that piece of policy this next session to put money there. And other economic justice issues are related to workers' rights in the workplace. Most people work without unions, unfortunately, in places like small employers in Vermont, and Vermont can do a lot more to protect people with just cause employment rights. You can't be fired for any reason. Reliable work schedules for folks who are in the industries like service and retail, so they have a reliable work schedule to fall back on, so they can get childcare. I mean, it's all interdependent. And the other 2 issues, frankly, I don't know any state that can't be, I don't know any state that cannot be having a real conversation around reproductive liberty and reproductive protection beyond constitutional protections, but actually practically, how can people actually access care? How can they access abortions, contraception? How do they make sure they can take time off of work to actually even go to the clinic? When we have access in better ways than many other states, there are still economic barriers that prevent people from accessing care. And the final issue I'll just have to say again as a mom is firearms and Vermont's very loose gun laws. It's time for us to be bold there again. We cannot, I feel like every day that goes by when there's another school shooting somewhere in the country or another near miss with people, and then also in this state, the high number of people who commit suicide by gun, it is a crisis. So it's another issue that I think we really need to grapple with down in Montpelier.
So as someone who's involved in government, how do you use community media to reach the residents of Burlington and also just to participate in democracy and encourage others to participate in democracy?
Well, I love public access, and one of the best parts when I was in city council was all of that locally is taped and recorded even before the pandemic. And I do think that state government has become more accessible because everything we provide is on Zoom and it's been streamed out in a lot of public access kind of ways. But it keeps our democracy accountable to folks. It keeps it accessible to folks to gather information, especially when people are very busy and due to capitalism have to work 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, it's a reality that a lot of people then get disconnected from issues that directly impact their lives. So community media and public access is vital for our democracy.
I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight.
Of course, thank you so much.
Thanks to the folks at RERAWS, the team that went out to RERAWS to get some of those interviews, and thanks to Emma Mulvaney-Stanek for chatting with us. We have a Brenda Siegel concession speech for the governorship. We don't have a Phil Scott at the Republican Party, but we do have this Brenda Siegel speech, so let's check in with her.
Good evening, everyone. I just spoke to the governor and congratulated him on his win. I'm going to start by saying that Susan B. Anthony gave her whole life to the work of voting rights for women. Her whole life. And then she died on the eve of its inevitability. The work is about making progress, fighting for us to have safer and stronger communities. We all need to become brave enough to lose. All of us. One thing that stuck out to me throughout this race was how important it was. Not only that someone ran, but that that person be someone with knowledge, experience, guts, and most importantly, the lived experience to make clear what we face, what is going wrong, and what work we all have to do, all of us have to do to make it better. As public figures and elected leaders, we can get lost in outcomes or wins, but the outcomes that matter most are if we get housing to all Vermonters. If we begin to make change across the finish line for strong, bold action for climate. if we have adequate childcare, and if we stop burying our children from overdose and suicide. At some point in this campaign, I turned to my team and I said, let's fight like hell to win, but also let's fight like hell to win on the issues, because losing on the issues is not an option for me. We 100% without fail won on the issues, and we did not just win, we knocked it out of the park beyond compare. If we were not there beating the drum when VRAP and ERAP was cut off without notice, if I had feared at all speaking truth to power when this administration was ready to cause harm, we would not have found $20 million. We would not have a new commissioner of DCF, and we would not see a scramble to do something. But we are not done yet. I was just at a meeting last night. We ended this campaign just as we started it, meeting with people experiencing homelessness. So I was at a meeting with people utilizing the hotel program, and through tears, people told me their immense fear of being dumped back in the street. We have to do something. I am talking to all of you. We have to do something. I know I'm not done, and I need all of you standing with me, and these folks are ready to tell their stories, and we are going to help them do just that. We broadcast that childcare money wasn't getting out the door, and now it is. We used a megaphone about the needs of our downtowns. We shared bravely and explicitly about the overdose crisis and the need for us to move forward. We will get overdose prevention sites this year because we were not afraid, and I am not done yet. This year, I will work with a legislator to introduce a comprehensive bill on the overdose crisis, and with all of your help, we will get it done. I want to turn to the 845 families, because this is personal, who lost loved ones, and promise you that your loved ones will not die in vain. We will fix this for other families, no matter how long it takes. And in that 845 families, included was my nephew, Kaya Siegel. And while I have the platform, I want to turn to my dad, who's here tonight, and say, though I was there, I can't imagine what it was like to bury your first son and your first grandson. And I say to you that they will not die in vain. I won't let them. We talked about climate and the clean heat standard and corrected the record on that, and we drove home the need for the build on in-state renewable energy, and we are going to get some serious climate action this year. What we have shown throughout this entire race is that Vermonters are worth fighting for, and that there are a lot of wins, even in a long shot race. We ran an incredible, truly tireless, though we are tired, but tireless, relentless, disciplined, tenacious campaign, and we did absolutely everything we could. We left all of it on the field. I want to start, though, by thanking my staff, Paige Diana Shopman, my campaign manager, who's home with COVID, long COVID, Shanae Chase Clifford, who is the master of debate prep, and you all saw me absolutely crush it in debates, right? And also thank you, Becca White and Kate Lapp, for debate prep as well. Chris Lamb, who is an OG staffer and did a lot for data, finance, call time, and filled in all the gaps. Zoe Flagolay, who came in at the end to do admin work. Nick Clark, who was our pinch hitter when we needed him. And there's one person I want to shout out and thank who needs no introduction, but Mira Macy. I have known her whole life, and it was a rocky start, but anyone on the team will tell you that she is now my champion staffer. She is my right-hand woman. She did so much, and she learned all of it on the job. Thank you all for the absolutely incredible job on a tough race. I want to say about them that they also took on this same risk, the same one I did. They did it anyways, they rose anyways, and we need to recognize how hard that is to do, not just for me, but also for them. And trust me, it is hard. I also want to say that there's some special champions in this race. You all know who you are. You came out early for us. You kept showing up. My whole team noticed when you showed up. Special big ups to Governor Howard Dean and all of the legislators who championed this race and all of my supporters who believed in a Vermont where all can feel loved and supported. It may not have been the outcome we wanted, but it was way better than most imagined, and we nailed down the things that mattered most to Vermonters. Because of all of you, we will get those things across the finish line this session or in the coming sessions, and that's no small triumph. It is in fact huge. My most important thank yous are to my family, my dad who has stood by me every step of the way, my mom who quietly sent me emails and texts and phone calls of encouragement, but didn't ever ask for a return call, and the one who deserves the most praise is Ajna Siegel, my son. It is not easy for our kids when we run for office. It is not easy for them when we don't have the outcomes we want. But Ajna has shown up at events, stood behind me, been in a commercial, and held debate watch parties. And as of today, he has a tattoo with my logo that he showed me when he got here. That was his gift to me. I didn't know about it. He championed his mama. Ajna Siegel, I love you.
There's our concession speech from Brenda Siegel. Still, Phil Scott, no sign of Phil Scott at the Republican Party, but does look like a lead for Phil.
Definitely, yeah.
Yep. Let's go back to a recap. We have some results to report. We're going back to Chittenden North. We can report this fully. We could little cross communication there. Phil Scott still looking ahead, but let's go to Chittenden North, check in with that one, which we are calling. Results on with Irene Renner eking out over Leland Morgan, 51% to 48%. That's 300 votes.
Super close.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a nail biter.
That was definitely, yes. And then let's go to Chittenden Central real quick. And Chittenden Central, same story as before. Phil Baruth, Martine Gulick, and Tanya Vyofsky looking like they're going to the Senate.
17 out of 18 reporting there, so pretty close to reported.
Yep, and let's check out the Southeast here. Once again, it's the incumbents, similar as what we talked about before. Thomas Chittenden, Ginny Lyons, and Keisha Hinsdale.
Yeah, we've got 8 out of 12, so that's a pretty strong lead there for that group.
Yep. Let's go over to Williston. Take a look at that Williston race. I'm going to hop over there real quick.
The District 2.
Yep, District 2. We got Aaron Brady, Angela Arsenault, looking like they're going to take those 2 seats, the 2 Democrats, over the 2 Republicans.
Yep, 31, 34% there versus 16 and 17.
Yep. Let's hop over to Heinsberg here, Heinsberg District 4.
We've got one seat here. Looks like Phil Poosh, the Democrat, will be taking that over Sarah Toscano, the Republican, 72 to 27%.
Go over to Burlington District 13. This is that Tiff Bloomley, Gabby Stebbin win over Tim Licata that we've talked about a few times here. That's looking pretty solid as well.
Yeah, strong support for those two seats there.
Let's go to Winooski, District 21. This one we have Taylor Small and Daisy Berbecco going to the legislature over Jordan Matt.
43 and 42% there. Interestingly, with here's one of those scenarios where the incumbent doesn't have the full lead, but pretty close.
Yeah. And then we'll go over to District 22. This is Essex Junction, the city of Essex Junction area. We have Lori Houghton and Karen Dolan looking like they're going over Seth Adam Manley.
Yeah, they'll be returning to the legislature.
Then District 23 to Essex Town. This one is Leonardo Dodge and Ray Garofano, Democrats, over Maurice Dunbar and Dennis White, Republicans.
This one is interesting, right? Had there been one Republican candidate, would that have turned out a little bit different?
That's a good question.
Who knows?
That's a good question, yeah. Let's check out our ballot items. We talked a lot about the ballot items earlier on in the night. Not a lot of change over there, but we can see what we're still looking at. The CSWD MRF Materials Recovery Facility is still a resounding yes. 81% people want the MRF.
Yeah, 18 out of 25 reporting, so it's looking like that's going to move forward.
Yeah.
Similar strong support on the Burlington High School bond, which we reported on earlier.
Yep.
75% there. And then our Communications Union District looks like it's moving forward as well.
And let's see what we have we have a yes vote from Williston, Essex, Essex Junction, and South Burlington. Is that right? Yes, we do. So most of these towns joining this Communication Union District so far.
Yeah, it sounds like that plan is going to move forward as designed.
Yep. And then let's just check in Essex Junction real quick. Essex Junction had several extra ballot items on their ballot this year. A lot of procedural stuff from being a new city. So things like, are you going to join Green Mountain Transit Authority, Winooski Valley Parks District? Are you going to give liquor licenses and you're going to sell wine and spirits? Yeses on that.
With that split from Essex, Essex Town, you know, they have to re-vote on how are we retaining these memberships in these processes, and yes to all of those. So no changes then, I would say that means for Essex Junction.
435 votes though, still against malt liquor and wine. So
interesting.
Interesting, yeah. We do have a speech from Becca Ballant at the Democratic Party at Hula, so let's go check in and hear from Becca Ballant.
Hello. Hello, Vermont. Thank you, Vermonters. Thank you for your vote. Thank you for your confidence in me. Thank you for giving me this incredible honor and opportunity to serve this state that I love so much. Thank you. Thank you. I just received a call from Liam Madden conceding the race. And I want to thank Liam for his candidacy and for his service to our country. We both share a deep commitment to Vermont. He's actually from my home county of Windham County, and I know he's going to continue to serve his community well. So thank you, Liam, for running. It's important to run. And of course, I have to give so much credit to the best congressional delegation in the whole country, which is the Vermont delegation. I meet a lot of people from across the nation and legislatures from other states, and they say, you are so lucky. You've got the giant of the Senate, Patrick Leahy, of course, as we know, unparalleled service to Vermont. We've got Peter Welch, who has been a mentor and a friend to me, who's going to help me succeed in the House. Yeah, he is. And of course, Bernie Sanders, who's been the conscience of the nation. And I was so honored to have his support. It really gave us so much energy in the home stretch. So thank you to all of those men who have served us so well. I can't wait to be a colleague with the senior and junior senator from Vermont. Thank you. So I'm standing here with my family and my team because tonight we reaffirm that Vermont and the nation is still a place where anything is possible. We are all still capable of change and promise and progress. And tonight, after 231 years, Vermonters are sending a woman to Congress. Thank you. So thank you to my incredible campaign team for hard work and hustle and commitment and joy, so much joy. I know everybody says this, but it's true, the best campaign team in politics. I thank you. Thank you for your deep commitment to Vermont and to this movement of so many people here in Vermont. I want to thank also my incredible campaign manager, Natalie Silver. As Natalie and I like to say, we're two scrappy little broads. Watch out! And I want to just thank most sincerely my close friend and advisor, Julia Barnes. So, Julia Barnes, I thank you for believing in me and for helping me to believe that it was possible for us to do this incredible thing together. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, thank you so much to my family, to my parents, to my siblings, to my extended family, but most of all, to my spouse, Elizabeth, and our two kids, Abe and Sarah, who are with me tonight. We always said in our family that running for Congress was really a family project. It's not just about one person. And it really is. It is a project. And the three of you, excuse me. There are actually four of us, yes. You can tell it's been a year. I'm a little tired. The three of you have made incredible sacrifices to get me to this place. And being in politics is incredibly lonely at times. It's really lonely. But it's not work that's done alone. It's done in a team, and we are a very tight team in this family. Team Ballant Wall, you are my rock, you are my refuge. I honestly could not be here without you. So thank you. So I have said over and over on this campaign that this is a time for courage. I know so many of us feel like these are such dark times. And it's so easy to be cynical about politics. But if we, those of us on the stage, if we had believed the conventional wisdom, if we had believed that change was impossible, I would not be standing here tonight. So take note and take heart. Vermont is a place where kindness and integrity and courage matter. Vermont is a place where the daughter of an immigrant dad and a working class mom can be the first woman and the first gay person to represent Vermont in the U.S. House of Representatives. So there are so many brave women leaders who gave me the courage and the hope over my lifetime to do this. And those strong women who have come before me have helped me to feel like I could possibly have a life in politics. And you know some of their names. They're incredible women like Shirley Chisholm and Ann Richards and Bella Abzug and Geraldine Ferraro. And someone you may not have heard of, but whose name I need to bring into the room tonight. Her name was Elaine Noble. She was the first openly gay person to run for a legislature in the United States. It was 1975. It was Massachusetts State House. She experienced so much hatred and discrimination. And when I learned of her race and her victory, there was this little part of me that thought maybe someday. She's still alive, and I just want us to remember that it's people like Elaine Noble who did this at a time when it was incredibly dangerous to do so that enabled me to run today. And another hero of mine is Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who I know many of you know. She was the first black woman elected to the Texas Senate and the first black woman who was elected from the South to represent in the U.S. House of Representatives. She said this of our nation: "We are a people in a quandary about the present. We are a people in search of our future. We are a people in search of a national community." That is still true now. We are a people in search of a national community. I've been all over the state during this campaign. Everywhere I go, every town, every meet and greet, somebody will say to me, "Becca, I don't want to hate my neighbors. I don't want to fear my neighbors. I want to live in a community where we can talk to each other again." So if you feel this way in this crowd, you're not the only one feeling that way. Thousands of Vermonters are feeling that way, and I know thousands of people across the country are feeling this way. We cannot continue to demonize each other. We have to stop and really see each other. See how much we share, even when we disagree, even when we hear hateful words. Every parent, regardless of their political party, worries about their kids' futures. Every working family right now is anxious and uncertain about how they're going to make ends meet. We're all afraid for the planet, all of us. We're afraid for the freedoms that we hold dear. And those fears are justified. And I know Congressman Welch spoke to this earlier. Oh, Senator-elect! Senator-elect! So as Senator-elect Welch said earlier, we know what's at stake. And it's not just the next 2 years. This is going to take a long time to right this ship. We got to dig deep. We got to find our courage. We have to find our strength. We have to lift each other up. Because even if we get good news in the midterms, the work is not over. We have a democracy to save. So yes, this is a time for great courage. It's a time for leaders who are courageous enough to say that our politics do not work for regular people. This is a time for leaders to fight as hard for other people's right to vote as they fight for their reelection. This is a time for us to end the politics that fuel corporate greed. This is a time for us to rebuild the middle class and bring us together. This is a time to say that affordable health care and stable housing for all will make us a stronger nation, not a weaker one. But most of all, my challenge, your challenge, the challenge of all of us is to have the everyday courage that will knit us back together as a nation. We have to listen truly to each other, even when we disagree. Not so that we can just argue, but so we can truly understand where somebody is coming from. Let's have the courage to listen with compassion, but to also speak with conviction. Let's have also the courage to know what's non-negotiable. And let's have the courage to know when we're actually wrong and we need to change our view. That takes real courage. So a lot of Vermonters ask me why I still have hope. Why am I running for Congress at this time? I feel so dark. Why do I see the light despite all the obstacles? I'm hopeful because of people who came before me, like Shirley Chisholm and Bella Abzug. I'm hopeful because of Ann Richards and Geraldine Ferraro and Barbara Jordan and Elaine Noble. I'm hopeful because those courageous leaders made it possible for me to be here tonight. And honestly, I'm hopeful because I never thought I'd be standing here. Really. It was a pipe dream. I didn't know anyone in politics. My parents didn't know anyone in politics. It seemed like such a strange notion to think I could run for office someday. But we did it. We did it because of thousands and thousands of Vermonters who stood with us, gave us $5, $10, $15, made thousands and thousands of calls. I think we made 535,000 calls. And we knocked on thousands of doors, and we believed that we could reject cynicism and believe in each other and believe in a grassroots movement that could be fierce and joyful. I ran for the Windham County Senate seat for the first time because I refused to accept that the richest nation in the world could not take care of working families, could not house them, could not feed them, could not give them health care. I had kids in my own classroom who I know were living in tents or in cars, whose parents were struggling with addiction. I still believe that we have to turn towards each other in our communities. That's how we're going to find our way through for each other and for our communities. When we started out in this race, we were down in the polls. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of endorsements. But we never stopped believing that if we pulled people together and ran an authentic, genuine race where people could see what I was about, that they would come to us because they wanted something different. This campaign has proved that incredible power of connection. We are craving it. We're a nation that is fraught with loneliness and disconnection. This campaign renewed my hope in the power and the spirit that comes from truly seeing one another and listening deeply and being joyful together. I know that Vermonters believe that politics can be different. That's why we won. That's why we won. I give you my word tonight that I will not back down from hard fights in Washington. I will carry your hopes and your wishes and your stories with me. I will stay rooted in our communities here in Vermont, and I will work for our most vulnerable neighbors every single day. Thank you. And I will do this. I will be able to do this because I know you will be standing with me. This past month has been incredible. People stopping me at the store, at the bank, at the post office saying, we're with you. You're going down. You're doing this hard thing. Thank goodness you want to do it because I don't want to do it. I heard that more and more and more. Or what's wrong with you? Or you're too tiny to do it. All the things. I heard all the things. But I will be able to do it because of the belief you've had in this campaign. You believe in this movement because we're fighting for climate action. We're fighting for universal health care. We're fighting for livable wages, for reproductive rights, for the safety of our trans and queer neighbors, for racial equity, for common sense gun laws, for families across the state who want a better life for their kids and grandkids, for a nation finally as good as its promise. So please, please have courage, stand firm, be compassionate, find hope and nurture it. We need this of each other. Our nation depends on this. Our future depends on this. We must give each other the courage to do all of this important work together. Thank you.
All right, and there we have it. Becca Balint with her victory speech, coming in with 60% of the vote over Liam Madden's 27% of the vote. We've got 200 towns reporting, so that's looking pretty solid at this point. Becca Balint going to Congress, first woman Vermont has sent to Congress. Christine had to run. Christine had work in the morning, so I'm going to bring us back through one last recap of all of our contested races. And let's start from the top with the state Senate races. We are starting with Chittenden North. Well, we have the Burlington High School bond here. Still a yes vote on that, but we'll hop over to the state Senate. Chittenden North, we have Irene Renner winning out over Leland Morgan, just barely. Then we have Chittenden Central District with Phil Baruth, Martine Gulick, and Tanya Vyofsky going to the Senate. In Chittenden Southeast, we have Thomas Chittenden, Ginny Lyons, and Keisha Hinsdale going to the Senate. So that's all of our Chittenden State Senators. This is our first of the this seven-seat the split up of the Chittenden Senate District. This is our first delegation from there. Let's move on to our state representatives. Let's start with Williston D2. Williston, we have Aaron Brady and Angela Arsenault, both Democrats, going to the legislature over Bruce Roy and Anthony Tony O'Rourke. Next, let's go to Heinsberg, District 4. That's Phil Poosh, the Democrat, with 72% of the vote over Sarah Toscano. Then at BTV 13, we've got Tiff Bloomley and Gabby Stebbins over Tom Licata. In Colchester, District 19, we have Sarita Austin and Patrick Brennan, both incumbents. Sarita Austin's the Democrat, Patrick Brennan is the Republican, both going to the legislature. And then in Colchester D20, we have Kurt Taylor and Seth Chase, two Democratic incumbents, beating out the Republicans Doug Wood and Tom Lesage. Let's go to Winooski D21. We have Daisy Rebecco, Democrat, and Taylor Small, Progressive Democrat incumbent, going to the legislature. In Essex Junction, we have Lori Houghton and Karen Dolan, both incumbent Democrats, going to the legislature over Seth Adam Manley, the Republican. In Essex 23, we have Leonora Dodge and Ray Garofano beating out Maurice Dunbar and Dennis White. In Essex Town, we have Alyssa Black, Democratic incumbent, beating out Roger Drury, the Republican. In Milton, we have Julia Andrews, Democrat, beating out Allison Duquette, the Republican. And in Chittenden-Franklin, we have Chris Taylor, the Republican, and Emily Hecker, the Democrat, beating out Chris Mattos, the Republican incumbent. Interesting one. Then let's check out those ballot items. Earlier tonight, we saw the Burlington High School bond. That is happening. That was a yes vote. Looking at the CSWD bond, that was also a yes vote. At the CUD, we have Williston, Essex Junction, and South Burlington all voting in favor of joining that communications union district. And then going over to Essex Junction, all of their new city procedural ballot items were successful. You can check out all of this information at results.townmeeting.tv. We'll have this up tonight and into tomorrow, so you can check that out and take a look at what the results were for your area. So thank you so much for joining us tonight for our 15th general election results show. I'm Jordan Butterfield. Christine Lott was here with me for most of the night. Thank you to Christine for helping us out. And thank you to all of our volunteers. Thank you to our van colleagues who helped us out tonight. And I want to, once again, tonight's show is dedicated in memory to our founder, Nat Ayer, who inspired our Exit Voices poll interviews and was a key part of the CCTV story. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again in 2 years. Thank you.